Shikuki, start with an Izakaya and make everyone cry. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26. Have you developed a new dish? Night coming quietly, the bustling city began to become brightly lit. People are leaving their jobs one after another, returning to their warm homes, or going to izakayas to drink a few glasses of wine and indulge themselves. At this time, a heavy downpour fell suddenly, bringing a different atmosphere and charm to the city. Until after 7 o'clock the izakaya is open for business, and the heavy rain still doesn't mean to stop. This kind of bad weather will naturally affect the business of the izakaya. After entertaining a few diners, Zhang Fan took some time to relax. Why? What? A mistake. If I knew it would rain heavily tonight, I should have closed for the night. Zhang Fan just sat there in silence for a long time before sighing helplessly, and just when he was thinking about closing early, some diners came to the izakaya, and the people who came were considered, well, regular customers. But see the first one to push the door open. It is the Nakari Arena, who has the talent of God's tongue. Her long golden hair is like a flowing waterfall. Whenever she shakes her hair gently, she seems to be showing her elegance and nobility to the world. Those watery eyes are like the brightest stars in the night sky, full of innocence and wisdom. Take a closer look. Still discoverable tonight, she actually put on a gorgeous princess dress. The hem of the skirt swayed gently with her steps, making her figure even more elegant. As for the other diner, it was the secretary Hisako, who was always inseparable from Arena. Although she completely lost to Arena in terms of temperament, her pure and sweet appearance and gentle and elegant temperament still left a deep impression on Zhang Fan. Isn't this Arena? Seeing that the diners who came into the izakaya were Arena Nakari and Hisako Nitaro, Zhang Fan was inevitably stunned. You know, Arena, would definitely be resentful of some of her opinions about civilian cuisine last night. And with her particularly arrogant personality, she will definitely be in Tatsuki Academy, studying her own cooking after she returns. Therefore, it was impossible to say that she would come to the izakaya again the next night. First, Zhang Fan is very confident she couldn't understand her own cooking so quickly. Secondly, tonight, it rains continuously. Even if she really likes the cooking she makes, she can't come at this time on purpose. Right. However, the development of things is often so outrageous, beyond Zhang Fan's expectations. Hey, let me take a guess. After you went back, you must have used the power of God's tongue to cook my cooking again, but it failed. At this time, Zhang Fan, who was stunned, understood something after thinking for a while, and couldn't help but stepped forward and teased Arena. What did you say? For a dish like yours that only costs 5,000 yen, I don't mind doing all kinds of research work. That? I just wanted to go to a restaurant to try the food, but it happened to rain heavily on the way, so I reluctantly came to your place to take shelter from the rain. Yes, I came here to take shelter from the rain. Facing Zhang Fan's questioning, Arena, who had just entered the izakaya, was instantly confused. After her face turned red instantly, although she was stung by Zhang Fan's words. How could she admit such a thing in front of Zhang Fan? So she just randomly found a lame excuse and excused herself. Oh, I'm here to take shelter from the rain. Are you sure it's not because you can't cook my food and you just want to ask for advice? Or maybe it means that my cooking conquered your divine tongue last night, and you missed it. Are you going to taste my cooking again today? Seeing that Arena's face was as red as a monkey's butt, Zhang Fan asked deliberately and maliciously, No, I told you everything. I have no interest in your cooking at all, so I won't try to make it after I go back. And your low-end, cheap, ordinary and boring civilian food, that is, I am very satisfied with the taste. The rest, what's so good about it? Arena, still blushing, continued to quibble. Understand? I understand everything. You damn duck has a tough mouth. There is no or no, don't want to say, but the body is honest. Oh, I see more people like you. Zhang Fan, looking at Arena, who was almost furious, inevitably had the urge to laugh if nothing else. Let's talk about this normally arrogant young lady. She often wears UI school uniform and appears in front of everyone with a serious and cold image. As a result, she came here wearing such a beautiful princess dress tonight, and even a fool would know what was going on. Zhang Fan, you are so bad at This moment, Nakari Arena is really going crazy. Hateful, how abominable. This Zhang Fan must have known a long time ago that there was nothing I could do with his food, so he deliberately embarrassed me like this. Ahem, okay, I won't tease you anymore. Originally, I wanted to close early tonight because of the weather, but you are here, and it happens that I have just developed a new dish. Hey, don't look at me with such astonishment. I can guarantee you that the shock level of the new dish will definitely surpass that of yesterday. Those 3 kinds of Western fast food tonight. After saying that, Zhang Fan no longer paid attention to Arena's shocked expression, but rolled up his sleeves and returned to the cooking table. New cuisine? Why did you come up with a new dish so quickly? Obviously, I haven't even studied your 3 Western fast food items yet. Oh no, you mean the new cuisine will surpass last night's beef hamburger, anchovy fries and chocolate brownie? Shock, excited, look forward to, confuse. In just a few seconds Arena's mood changed so quickly. The purpose of her visit to the Izakaya this time was indeed to see Zhang Fan's cooking skills. Why could the god's tongue completely malfunction? However, I didn't expect that when I visited the Izakaya again, I would learn that he had developed a new dish. Let me tell you this, the 3 Western-style fast food items last night were all made by me deliberately using leftover ingredients. Things like toast bread, tofu dregs and rice bran are not just for you, but for ordinary people. Very few people want to eat it, so those dishes don't represent my true level at all, and this brand new dish, I can guarantee you, will definitely represent the highest level in the entire culinary world. The most highest level. If it had been someone else, if he dares to say such arrogant words, Arena will definitely think that he is a madman, but if these words came from his mouth, Zhang Fan, then she would have every reason to believe it. Could it be that on this night of pouring rain can I, Arena, really witness the birth of this dish? Chapter 27 5-Star Hotel Chef. Gourmet food. There is no absolute strongest per se, because everyone's definition and preference of food will be different, but if you look at it from a specific aspect, food can also have the strongest representative. For example, BJ roast duck is one of the famous dishes of the Celestial Dynasty, a representative dish of the imperial capital, and is also known as the world's delicacy. Italian pizza, French goose liver, Japanese sushi, Asan curry. These are also representative delicacies from different countries. In Arena's mind, the cuisine that can satisfy her god's tongue must be the strongest cuisine. Last night, she actually wanted to say, "This is the most perfect dish I have ever eaten so far." However, because of her personality, she did not dare to speak in front of Zhang Fan. That's it, the so-called new cuisine. In fact, it is the special recipe Zhang Fan just obtained. Reincarnation spring rolls. To make this dish, you must first prepare various vegetable ingredients, such as mushrooms, cabbage, carrots, spring bamboo shoots, green peppers, etc. But Zhang Fan first turned on the faucet, washed all the vegetables one by one, and prepared to chop them into pieces. Exclamation mark. Subsequently he finally took out the slicing knife from Xian's kitchen set. Looking closely, although this knife is a slicing knife, its shape is similar to a broad-edged sword. The back of the knife is thicker and the tip is extremely sharp. Under the weak light, the sword's light shimmered so dazzlingly that both Arena and Hisako felt dazzled. The pattern of this knife. Arena had never seen such a weird kitchen knife before, and was inevitably startled. Her intuition told her that the slicing knife Zhang Fan used was not an ordinary kitchen knife sold on the market. Zhang Fan ignored Arena's reaction. He tightened his eyes, calmed down slightly, and quickly swung his sword down. With the sound of the knife almost instantly, all the vegetables on the chopping board were chopped into fine pieces by him. Immediately afterwards, blanch the various chopped vegetables into fine pieces, then add the special sauce and stir. At this time, when looking at Zhang Fan's sword swings, after images appeared, Nidofi Shako couldn't help but cover his mouth in fright. His eyes filled with disbelief. Only now did she finally remember that when Zhang Fan made those 3 Western-style fast food last night, it seemed that he didn't need a kitchen knife. Therefore, it was difficult to peek at his own knife skills at that time, and now after seeing his knife skills she was deeply shocked when his speed and strength were beyond the comparison of ordinary chefs. Miss Arena, his knife skills are really overbearing. I have never seen any chef whose knife skills are as crisp and sharp as his. In the end, Fei Shasha, who couldn't hold himself any longer, screamed loudly. Strangeness, his age should be around 20 years old, right? At this age, If you were in Tatsuki Academy, you would be about the same as Ringtong Senpai and the others. As for the top 10 people like Senior Sai Ingshi and Senior Sister Ringtong Kobayashi, I have been lucky enough to witness their cooking. How to say, their knife skills are certainly amazing, but as long as I continue to practice for a few more years, I can still reach their level. But Zhang Fan's knife skills have something that makes me feel that even if I work hard for decades, I may not be able to reach his level. Such a level. Arena's eyes flickered for a few times, and she soon discovered a terrible fact. That is, in front of you this is Zhang Fan. The strength he displays is often extremely inconsistent with his age, and if her thoughts were known to Zhang Fan, who was busy, he would definitely praise her for being very discerning. After all, before Zhang Fan traveled to this world, his cooking skills had already reached the level of a 5-star hotel chef, not to mention young chefs in their 20s, even chefs in their 50s may not be his opponents. Vegetable filling. After the production is completed, the next step is to process the real snapper, when a huge red sea bream was placed on the chopping board. Arena's eyes could not help but light up slightly to know in the palace of Japanese cuisine snapper is simply a godlike existence. There are more than 170 kinds of snapper in major seafood markets across the country, but only 48 of them are the most delicious. Among these 48 types of sea bream, they are divided into 3 categories: super delicious, very delicious, and delicious. Among them, there are only 16 species of super delicious sea bream listed as 5-star fish. The real snapper is one of the top 16 species of snapper. If you look closely, you will see that Zhang Fan's sea bream is very large, with a length of more than 1 meter. It is considered a giant among all common sea breams. Although bigger fish may not necessarily be more delicious, larger fish often have more meat and nutrients. Even not exaggerating, a real snapper like Zhang Fan's is a rare thing on the market. What the hell doesn't his Izakaya also have very rare ingredients? If I could cook it directly last night, maybe I would be convinced. Looking back, Arena murmured a few words to herself. Her tone seemed to be a bit complaining, but also a bit expected. Now but you can see that Zhang Fan cleaned the surface of the sea bream, then he continued to use his slicing knife from the Quizhitayan kitchen set to remove impurities and scales on the surface, then place the real snapper on the chopping board with the head facing up, the back facing out, and the belly facing down. Use the tip of the slicing knife to make a small opening in the fish skin. Immediately afterwards gently cut along the dividing line between the skin and the flesh. Brush. Soon, Zhang Fan quickly cut open the entire sea bream skin. Such delicate knife skills are naturally completely different from the extremely domineering knife skills he just displayed. Seeing that Zhang Fan could use the same kitchen knife to use different knife skills according to different conditions of the ingredients, Arena was dumbfounded. On his body, how many unique skills do you still have? Arena, who looked away and felt a little numb, could only ask herself. She was very glad that she came to the Izakaya tonight regardless of the pouring rain. Otherwise, I really wouldn't be able to see Zhang Fan's amazing knife skills, and I wouldn't be able to see such a wonderful scene. Ding 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 ding, ding 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 ding. Just when she was secretly happy about this, Zhang Fan actually took out a kitchen knife covered with steel rings and small holes. This. What kind of kitchen knife is this? Seeing this, Arena's eyes were instantly filled with curiosity. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28: The Person You Care About Most. Because I haven't obtained the 100 Caves kitchen knife yet, therefore, Zhang Fan could only use an ordinary kitchen knife, drill some small holes, and then thread some steel wires to form a steel ring. His kitchen knife has many small holes drilled through it and then threaded with steel wire. On the side, Fei Shasha saw some clues. Zhang Fan, do you want to use this strange kitchen knife to process snapper meat? Arena, who came back to her senses but had no clue, couldn't help but stand up and ask. Right, that's right. If you want to complete the dish, you need a kitchen knife like this. After Zhang Fan said that, he turned on the stove switch, then adjusted it to medium heat, and then placed the kitchen knife on the stove to heat it. This operation naturally confused both Arena and Hisako. Kitchen knife, just forget about being weird. Why do we still need to use ordinary fire to heat it? However, at the same time Zhang Fan, prepared a cloth towel that Sama Yukihira often hung on his wrist in the original plot. First, Wrap the white cloth towel tightly on your right hand like a bandage, and then prepare a basin of cold water. Could it be he wants to? Seeing Zhang Fan doing this, Irina quickly understood and couldn't help but look shocked. Crazy. What kind of cuisine requires this method? Why, miss, what on earth is he going to do? Nitto. Hisako blinked her bright eyes. She had a relatively low understanding and seemed not to realize the seriousness of the matter. After a few minutes, when the kitchen knife was burning red on the stove, Zhang Fan, who had sharp eyes and quick hands, quickly turned off the stove. Then, with Irina and Hisako stunned, he used his right hand wrapped in a towel to tightly hold the kitchen knife. See. This situation faced Shasha was so frightened that he hurriedly covered his face. From this moment on, she finally understood how crazy Zhang Fan's actions were. Even though she had expected this step in advance, Irina was still greatly shocked when she saw Zhang Fan holding the red-hot kitchen knife without hesitation. If Zhang Fan's knife skills just made her feel inferior, so the courage shown by Zhang Fan this time made her even more impressed. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Then, Zhang Fan kept waving the kitchen knife in his hand. The sea-bream meat on the chopping board seemed to be blown to pieces, like cherry blossoms falling in spring. All kinds of minced meat flew into the air, and then began to fall quickly on the plate like a parabola. The reason why the cut sea-bream meat will be directly turned into minced meat is that the kitchen knife is full of small holes and steel rings, but no matter what, Zhang Fan's current performance really makes Irina unable to recover for a long time. Logically speaking, there are many ways to maintain the taste of sea-bream, but Zhang Fan chose this extremely extreme behavior. It actually uses the heat of the kitchen knife to grill the surface of the fish in an instant when handling the snapper, thus preserving the freshness and taste of the fish. I see. So, you punched some small holes in the kitchen knife and used steel wire to thread it into a steel ring. After all, when you use a kitchen knife to cut sea-bream meat, this process will create a pressure on the contact surface. And this pressure causes the sea-bream meat to be squeezed into those steel rings, forming minced meat of the same size. Speaking of which, Irina was suddenly confused. She never imagined that Zhang Fan's new cuisine would be so outrageous. In the entire culinary world, which chef dares to use this self-inflicted method to fully bring out the flavor of sea-bream and create the most perfect dish? Click. Finally, when he finished handling the snapper, the kitchen knife in Zhang Fan's hand finally broke. Perhaps it is because the material of this kitchen knife is not very good, or perhaps after heating, the blade gradually cools and hardens during the process of cutting the sea-bream, and the toughness is reduced and eventually breaks. At this time, Zhang Fan ignored the broken kitchen knife and quickly untied the cloth towel wrapped around his right hand, revealing his slightly burned palm. After he said nothing directly, put this right hand into the basin of cold water. Use cold water to take away the remaining heat from the burned area to avoid continued burns on your right hand. Are you okay? Coming closer and seeing the reddish right hand in the cold water basin, Irina's voice became gentle. It's okay. Although wrapping your right hand with a cloth towel is a taboo in the chef industry. After all, it will affect the feel of the knife when using it, but there is nothing you can do about it. Zhang Fan raised his head and smiled at Irina. No, cloth towel, I mean, your hand is fine, right? It's out of the way, it's just a little burned. Soak it in cold water for a while, then apply some burn ointment on it and it'll be fine. Zhang Fan said it truthfully. Only a ghost will believe you. Irina couldn't help but choke up a little when looking at Zhang Fan, who was always calm and composed. If the kitchen knife is a chef's weapon, then hands are the chef's best tools. For chefs, it is important to have superb cooking skills, but as the soft conditions have improved, the hard conditions must also be kept intact. If you don't have a pair of intact hands, no matter how good your cooking skills are, it's useless. Why, you have to do this? Finally, Irina asked, her eyes filled with mist. Didn't I tell you, I want to make the most perfect dish for you to taste? Zhang Fan's words made Irina believe it subconsciously, which made her feel very moved in her heart. So you have to do whatever it takes, and you have to risk your right hand getting burned. The most important thing about cooking is cooking it for the people you care about. This is the most meaningful thing. This truth has actually been implemented in the entire world of Shaojin no Soul, and this is something that Irina cannot understand at the moment, but at this moment, she could really feel it on Zhang Fan. PFFT, do you really believe it? Looking at Irina, who was about to cry, Zhang Fan took his right hand back from the cold water basin and couldn't help but laugh. The method of cooking this dish is to use the heat of the kitchen knife to maintain the deliciousness of the real snapper, so I have to use this method. The method has nothing to do with you. What's more, people like you are not worthy of my efforts yet, so don't be too narcissistic or self-impressed. Arena, I can't help but be stunned. As expected, this guy always talks a lot, but it happened to be mysterious and unpredictable, and she couldn't see through his thoughts at all. It really pissed her off. Chapter 29 Glowing. Finished handling the real snapper, the next procedure is even simpler. Just wrap all the fillings into the spring roll wrapper, then gently pinch it like a butterfly flapping its wings, and a reincarnated spring roll is formed. In just 2 or 3 minutes, 20 reincarnation spring rolls were placed in front of Zhang Fan. The essential: not only is it fast to create, even the shape of each reincarnated spring roll is so beautiful that there is no need to tinker with it. Wow, it turns out they are made in spring rolls. Seeing a large plate of reincarnated spring rolls in front of him, Nido Hisako couldn't help but blinked, slightly surprised. She is good at medicinal cuisine and has done research on many ancient medical books of the Chinese dynasty. She has also done some research on snacks such as spring rolls that were available in the Qin and Han dynasties. In her eyes, making spring rolls is relatively simple. All you need to do is chop the various ingredients, mix them well, season them, wrap them in a crust and fry them until golden brown. This production method is naturally convenient and fast, and is in line with the fast-paced life of modern people. It's just that fried things like this are different from the concept of medicated cuisine that advocates health and self-cultivation, so Fei Shasha has never been very interested. Have to say, Zhang Fan's many performances really surprised me, but if the new dish is spring rolls, then the matching of ingredients and the method of wrapping the spring rolls are the most basic steps. The most important, while frying the spring rolls, this is what an excellent chef controls over heat and oil temperature. Unexpectedly, as soon as Arena finished speaking, Zhang Fan dropped the prepared reincarnation spring rolls into the oil pan one after another. Seeing this scene, Arena, was immediately confused. Why isn't the temperature of this oil not yet bubbling? If you fry the spring rolls in a hurry at this moment, the filling inside the spring rolls will quickly collapse because the oil temperature is too low. Fry it is a very common cooking method compared with steaming and boiling. Its temperature is much higher, but if not done properly, undercooked frying may occur. The reason is that because the frying temperature is too high, the heat transfer from the oil to the food far exceeds the heat transfer rate inside the food, that is to say on the surface of food. After some frying, maybe the temperature has reached 150 to 200 degrees Celsius, and it will be burnt if fried again, but at this time, the internal temperature of the food may only be 30 to 50 degrees Celsius, which is still half cooked. On the contrary, if the heating temperature is lower, the temperature inside and outside the food will be closer, and there will be no such thing as burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. Therefore, when frying most ingredients, they will be put into the pan when the temperature is only 6 or 70% hot. However, when frying spring rolls, the oil temperature should not be too low. If the oil temperature is too low, the spring rolls will absorb too much oil, the outer skin will not be crispy, the texture will become greasy, and they may even collapse. At this moment, ignoring Arena's reaction, Zhang Fan continued to fry the reincarnation spring rolls. When one side of the spring roll wrapper was fried until golden, the air of the entire Izakaya was filled with a strong fragrance of spring rolls. Then, realizing that the time was almost up, he used a pair of long chopsticks to flip over the spring rolls and fry them again. After a while, all the spring rolls were fried. Then, when a whole plate of golden reincarnation spring rolls was placed in front of Arena, Zhang Fan took a deep breath and said with a smile, "Okay, this is my new dish of reincarnation spring rolls." Seeing this, Arena couldn't help but twitch the tip of her nose. I actually smelled a strong aroma flowing out from the golden spring roll skin. This made Nakari Arena's eyes suddenly light up, and she began to look at this plate of reincarnation spring rolls carefully. Traditional spring roll fillings generally include bean sprouts, vermicelli, pork, etc. However, the reincarnation spring rolls made by Zhang Fan are unique. Its fillings include mushrooms, cabbage, carrots, spring bamboo shoots, green peppers and real snapper. Although these ingredients may seem unrelated, when they are skillfully blended together, they produce amazing effects and very funny. After some deep frying under the dim light, the entire surface of the reincarnated spring rolls shines like stars in the sky. Cool, it's so shiny, it feels like it's glowing. On the side, Fei Shasha, who was looking at it, couldn't help but exclaim, and as soon as she finished speaking, the entire plate of reincarnated spring rolls made a swish, swish, swish sound, bursting out with several dazzling rays of light, lighting up the entire Izakaya. Finally, amidst the exclamations, Irina and Hisako couldn't help but close their eyes. Cooking, will it glow? Almost no one can give a definite answer to this very mysterious question, but in fact, through some special means, dishes can still be made to shine. The first is the use of fluorescent substances. When sauces or ingredients are heated and stirred, this fluorescent substance emits light, making the entire dish look sparkling. Then, you can also use chemical reactions between ingredients. For example, some restaurants' ingredients containing citric acid and sodium bicarbonate are used to make luminous dishes. When these ingredients are heated, the citric acid and sodium bicarbonate react chemically and release carbon monoxide gas. When these gases react with oxygen in the surrounding environment, they emit blue light. In short, the reason why luminous cuisine glows must be due to external forces and substances, and the light that Zhang Fan emits directly from the inside of the food is so dazzling that it is the only one in the world. What just happened? Why is it so good that the spring rolls will glow? After a while, the dazzling rays of light quickly dissipated, and the Izakaya returned to that peaceful state again, and this sudden situation naturally made Shasha slowly open his bright eyes. His head kept buzzing, and he couldn't recover for a long time. It was difficult for her to accept what had just happened. She always felt that this kind of luminous food was simply ridiculous. Nakari Irina's head was confused almost at that moment. Facing this plate of reincarnated spring rolls, she couldn't wait to take out all the cooking knowledge she had learned throughout her life and analyze them one by one. Why do spring rolls glow after being fried? Result naturally, even if she were to pry open Newton's coffin board and let Newton crawl out again, she would still be destined to be unable to explain this magical phenomenon. Chapter 30. This feeling is about to fly. Good food, it can never be separated from the careful combination of ingredients, unique cooking techniques, and superb knife skills. It was obvious that Zhang Fan's reincarnation spring roll dish was perfect in all aspects. Even Irina, who has the talent of God's tongue, was amazed. If not seen with my own eyes, she couldn't believe that there could be such magical and luminous cuisine in this world. How is this phenomenon of food glowing achieved? Irina, who withdrew her gaze and pretended to be calm, asked with interest. Want to know? Zhang Fan said with a smile. Of course I do. Irina nodded. It's very simple. You just need to use glutinous rice flour and changmei noodles to make the spring roll skin, which makes the spring roll skin softer and shiny. Then during the frying process, pay attention to the heat and oil temperature to form a crispy layer on the surface of the spring rolls. Then you will find that everything you do has nothing to do with the brilliance of the food. At first, Irina listened carefully, fearing that she might miss some link, but at the end, she discovered that it was Zhang Fan who was deliberately teasing her again. She was so angry that she stamped her feet and rolled her eyes at him. Perhaps it is very irrational to take the initiative to ask Zhang Fan for advice. After all, every time I didn't even say a few words to him, I would be so angry with him, but I couldn't do anything with him. Okay, this glowing phenomenon, it just adds some extra flair, but it doesn't actually improve the texture and taste of the food at all. What's more, this is your first time seeing this kind of situation, so you will definitely feel strange, but you will get used to it if you see it more often. After saying this, Zhang Fan pointed at the plate of reincarnated spring rolls in front of him. This kind of reincarnation spring roll, the flavor is most delicious only when it's freshly fried, so you'd better use your chopsticks first. If it's too late and you miss the best opportunity, the quality of the sea bream meat inside the spring roll will be lost quickly, and it will become unpalatable. Then don't blame me for not making the perfect one. The food, I see, we know that delicious food can only get the most out of it when you taste it right after it is finished. Therefore, even though Irina still had many questions in her mind, she quickly picked up her chopsticks, picked up a small piece of reincarnation spring roll, and tasted it carefully. Golden spring roll skin wrapped with pink sea bream meat and various vegetables. Although the spring roll skin is baked to a crispy and golden color, it still shimmers under the light, making it look mouth-watering at this time. As you bite down with your teeth, the spring roll wrapper quickly bursts in your mouth, bringing out the delicious taste of sea bream. How come? Irina, who has the talent of God's tongue, was immediately stunned. She was actually full of expectations for Zhang Fan's cooking, But she was also worried that his cooking would once again exceed her knowledge and understanding like before, leaving her at a loss. And the reincarnation spring roll that just came into my mouth. This spring roll skin is really crispy and has a rich texture. The deliciousness and smoothness of the sea bream meat is in sharp contrast to the crispiness of the spring roll wrappers, but in this contrast, because the skin of the spring roll is not too greasy, it makes the whole reincarnated spring roll taste extremely refreshing. At the same time, on the seasoning, the saltiness of soy sauce and the spiciness of shredded ginger perfectly complement the deliciousness of the sea bream meat. The sourness of vinegar makes the taste of the whole dish more complex and layered. All in all, whether it is crispy spring roll wrappers, tender real sea bream meat, crisp vegetable side dishes, or simple special seasonings, this magical change in taste makes Irina fall in love instantly! Exclamation mark. Finally, as the swallowing movement came to an end, Irina finally took her first bite of the reincarnation spring roll. Live. Still alive. The snapper in the spring roll is actually alive. Opening her eyes, Irina, who was still unfinished, couldn't help showing an expression of disbelief, as if she had found something terrible in the reincarnation spring roll dish. Indeed, at the very beginning she was affected by the outermost spring roll wrapper, so she couldn't taste the taste of the sea bream filing inside. With the completion of the swallowing movement, she felt a strong smell of sea bream seafood, which gradually spread into the entire mouth. It's really strange to say that even though I've already eaten it, I still feel that the fish meat keeps melting in my mouth, and the delicious meat keeps flowing in my mouth. This wonderful taste naturally gives Irina the illusion that this real sea bream is still alive and still maintains the breath of life. At the same time, Irina can feel the blood in her body because of the sea bream meat. They seem to be awakening, and they started to surge up one after another. It is no exaggeration to say that she has eaten delicacies from the mountains and seas all her life, and has also witnessed the perfect works of many excellent chefs. There has never been a dish that can make her heart beat like the reincarnation spring rolls made by Zhang Fan. Extremely beautiful, extremely fresh, very fragrant, extremely brittle. There are really no words to describe the taste experience brought by reincarnation spring rolls. Involuntarily, Irina began to look at Zhang Fan blankly. This guy always surprises her so much. In this man, apart from his free and easy attitude, apart from his innate temperament, there is nothing that can overlap with those of their peers. Miss, are you okay? However, at this moment, Fei Shasha's anxious voice suddenly sounded around him. This made Irina, who was obsessed with the taste of the reincarnation spring rolls and was stunned, quickly come to her senses. It's okay. I was just thinking about this reincarnation spring roll dish carefully, and it was inevitable that I was too absorbed in it. What? I couldn't taste anything from the first bite, so I have to continue to take the second bite. After finishing speaking, Nakari Irina continued to take another bite under Zhang Fan's gaze. In terms of taste, the taste of the reincarnation spring rolls is undeniable. Very delicious. It's even more flavorful than sashimi that has the original taste of sea bream. Then it is paired with various vegetables and thin pancake skins, and after careful heat control, this umami flavor can be brought out to the extreme. In addition, the spring roll skin is crispy, while the filling inside is soft and delicate. The combination of the two makes the taste really gonna fly. Chapter 31. I shine in cooking, not in drugging. Finally, Irina, who had been patient, finally couldn't resist the charm of reincarnated spring rolls. Her breathing gradually became rapid, and the consciousness in her brain gradually disappeared. There was a particularly satisfied look on her face. At the same time, her face became redder and redder, and under the light, she looked even cuter. After glancing at Irina for a few moments, Zhang Fan couldn't help but be stunned for a moment when he saw her performance be good. I shine through cooking, not drugging. When Ito Higasako saw Irina, he tasted 2 reincarnation spring rolls in a row, and then fell into a brief trance. This result naturally made her feel very curious and surprised. She kept thinking to herself, could it be that the plate of reincarnation spring rolls in front of her was really so delicious? Fei Shang, don't be stupid, come here and have a try. Afterwards, Irina opened her eyes, turned around and saw Hisako, whose eyes were also full of expectation, and took the initiative to push the plate of reincarnated spring rolls in front of her. Why, is it really possible? Fei Shasha was stunned for a moment, and then asked back flattered, just feel free to eat. Irina just nodded slightly with Irina's consent. Hisako quickly picked up a pair of chopsticks and tasted it carefully. When you bite off the spring roll wrapper with your teeth, you can feel the crispy texture, and then taste the spring roll wrapper together with the fish and vegetables inside. During this process, You can really feel the complex flavors of the delicious sea bream, crisp vegetables and sweet sauce. Although the flavors of these ingredients are complex, they intertwine to form an unforgettable dish. Obviously just a few like choose Fisha was immediately conquered by the reincarnated spring roll. Maybe she doesn't have Irina's God's tongue ability, so she can't appreciate the deeper things that Zhang Fan's cooking brings, but her heart still felt very warm, and then she couldn't help the restlessness in her heart, and hummed twice. Some dishes it's very ordinary, but it contains all kinds of stories and emotions. These emotions and stories can arouse people's resonance and emotional connection, making them more likely to be attracted and moved, just like the reincarnation spring roll made by Zhang Fan. For Irina, who suffered an unfortunate childhood, it is a good medicine that can heal the soul. But for Hisako, who regards Irina as his lifelong helper, he admires Zhang Fan's ingenuity. At last a whole plate of reincarnation spring rolls just like that. The two girls Irina and Hisako devoured it. Miss, I have never eaten such delicious food in my life. Although this sentence may hurt you, I still have to admit that his shopkeeper Zhang's cooking is really far superior to you. Wiping his mouth, he savored the taste of the reincarnation spring roll left in his mouth at this moment. Hisako couldn't help but feel particularly satisfied, and then he told Irina truthfully, indeed, it's really good. No matter which aspect, whether it is the fragrance or taste, it can be fully utilized, especially the feeling every time you bite it with your teeth, which can make people almost lose consciousness. I have to say, Zhang Fan, your cooking is really perfect. Irina closed her eyes and began to fill the dish with her heart and God's tongue, and was shocked by all the excitement. Yeah, is this Zhang Fan's cooking? It's really enviable and terrifying. If the 3 Western-style fast food last night made Irina shaken, so this reincarnation spring roll dish undoubtedly won her over and made her completely convinced of Zhang Fan. I see. Finally, I understand. When it comes to cooking, I have always believed that there is no need to mythologize or over-interpret it. After all, no matter how magical the food is, it will eventually be defeated by my ability of God's tongue, and every time, God's tongue allows me to make the most correct choice and choose the most correct answer. After all, no one's cooking mistakes will happen to me again, so, under this influence, I always think that everything I do is correct and right. No one can be above me. Irina, however, Zhang Fan, your cooking, whether it's the 3 kinds of Western fast food last night or the reincarnation spring rolls tonight, but they all exceeded my imagination and knowledge, and they all gave me an answer I had never thought of. Having said this, Irina couldn't help but raise her head and look deeply at Zhang Fan again. For some reason, she remembered her childhood, the harm done to her by Nakare Thistle, and her mother Nakare Shina's running away from home, and all of this was inseparable from the tongue of God. Many people often envy the terrifying ability of God's tongue, wishing they could possess it so that they could reach the pinnacle of life like Irina. But only Irina herself, only then did she realize how terrifying the curse of God's tongue was, and how much damage it had caused to her. If she had a choice, she would rather live on this earth as an ordinary human being than be born with this ability. In fact, after experiencing the extreme education of Nakare Thistle, Irina is like a bird imprisoned in a cage, completely losing herself and her freedom. Throughout her entire childhood, she lived a very lonely life with almost no friends around her. Only Fiseo could understand her pain a little. Even now, she can't get rid of the shadow of her childhood, and the figure of Nakare Kiku is always lingering in her mind. Sometimes even when I go to bed at night, I will wake up because of nightmares like that. All along, she had actually been working hard on how to get rid of the influence of Nakare Thistle and how to break through this psychological prison, but no matter how hard she tries, there was nothing she could do to undo this trauma. However, today, this trauma was finally cured by the reincarnation spring roll made by an Izakaya owner named Zhang Fan. Snort, this big bastard, with his ability, he can definitely make the most rare and noble dishes in the world. It turned out that in order to deliberately disgust me and make me feel uncomfortable, he even used some cheap ingredients to make Western fast food for me to taste when we first met. Really, the more I think about it, the more angry I become. And even though he is so strong, he still lives in this small izakaya. We also have to cook common dishes such as kebabs, cucumbers with cold dishes, milfeu pancakes, tempura, etc. Finally, Irina Nakare came back to her senses, feeling extremely depressed. Chapter 32 New Diners. Have a drink. This is the mantra of many 996 social animals when they come to the izakaya. However, this sentence is pure nonsense. It is probably the same as what the domestic leaders of China said. Well, I will just say a few words. These social beasts often drink one glass after another when they arrive at an izakaya. Moreover, they often have excuses to convince themselves, this is the last drink, I will go home after drinking it. The results of it, after drinking more than a dozen drinks, we continue chatting and laughing in the izakaya. Of course, there are also some social workers who don't actually want to go home after get off work and just find reasons to waste time outside. Therefore, places like izakaya have naturally become the favor of many people. You know, the word "ju" in the izakaya means in, which means that this izakaya is a place where you can stay for a long time. It's just that Zhang Fan is a little willful. His izakaya will close as soon as the business hours reach 12 o'clock in the morning. Tonight the coming of heavy rain is accompanied by a special atmosphere. There is always a moist smell in the air, and the raindrops fall on the ground, causing a string of water splashes. Finally the sound of rain became louder and louder. The entire nighttime world seems to be surrounded by rain. Although it is still raining outside, there will still be some diners patronizing the izakaya after arena. Only the number of diners is worse than before. Even these diners stopped staying and chose to leave after drinking and eating. This kept the izakaya in a deserted state tonight, and Zhang Fan was relatively at ease. At this time, Zhang Fan started to pick up a corner of the knife cloth and gently pressed it on the blade, so that the knife cloth completely covered the blade. Then start from the tip of the knife, along the back of the knife, and wipe carefully in the direction of the blade. After wiping one side, turn the knife cloth over and continue wiping the other side in the same way. The whole action, it can be seen that it is very gentle. Finally, as the action of wiping the kitchen knife ends, the blade of the kitchen knife becomes shiny. Arena, who had not yet left, was sitting there quietly alone with her chin in her hands, staring at Zhang Fan. Those watery eyes seemed to be full of thinking. I don't know what she was thinking in her mind at the moment. Hello, why are you staring at me? Afterwards, Zhang Fan took back the kitchen knife and turned to look at Arena, who was always staring at him. She seemed to understand the reincarnation spring roll dish just now, which shocked her so much that she couldn't help but ask with a smile, no, with your appearance, I don't even bother to look at you. When Nakari Arena heard Zhang Fan's words, she was so frightened that she quickly turned away. I said, you've already finished my new best dish. You're not old enough to drink yet, so why are you always hanging out at izakayas? Speaking of this, Zhang Fan felt very strange. The eldest daughter of the Nakari family would probably disdain to come to a small place like an izakaya. As a result, she was just like the gluttonous Kobayashi Gentian, who seemed to refuse to leave after tasting her own food. Although the izakaya itself is a place that provides food and drinks, you can enjoy food and socializing here. Moreover, Arena is a diner and the god of izakaya. At the moment it's not closing time yet, so thinking about it carefully, Zhang Fan really had no reason to drive her away. But right here, he and Arena were staring at each other with big eyes and small eyes. She would feel embarrassed even if she wasn't embarrassed. This didn't I just tell you, this time I came to the izakaya, I didn't come for your food at all, but I came to take shelter from the rain. After hearing what Zhang Fan meant, Arena could only blink her eyes and continue to reply with a guilty conscience, it's still raining heavily outside, so I must continue to stay here. When the rain subsides or stops, I will go back. Talk, she said. So, what else can I do? Just seeing her come up with such a lame excuse, Zhang Fan's eyes couldn't help but become suspicious. Did she really expect that it would rain heavily tonight? Otherwise, why would she be using this excuse to fool herself? Seeing Zhang Fan's eyes turned full of suspicion, Arena couldn't help but feel even more guilty. She quickly found a topic and said, besides, who said that if you are not old enough to drink, you can't stay in the izakaya all the time? I can't drink anything else like your scented tea last night. I think it's quite delicious. How about, you can make me a cup of scented tea? Yo, you really can't wait to leave. Hearing this, Zhang Fan could only smile helplessly, but then he didn't say much. Instead, he brewed 2 cups of scented tea and placed them in front of Arena and Hisako. Really, just like Arena said, his izakaya also has many diners who are under the drinking age, and these diners cannot be provided with alcoholic drinks, so Zhang Fan will prepare extra scented tea, herbal tea, plum juice, other cold drinks, and even low-cost sugar water every day. At this moment Arena picked up the cup of jasmine tea after a slight sniff. It's still a familiar smell, and it's still a familiar formula, although it has a light fragrance. When you drink it, you feel it has a strong flavor. Call it not luxurious, it is indeed an ordinary cup of jasmine tea, but call it luxurious and noble. Its scent of scented tea is enough to attract Irina. Why, Gentian, is this the Izakaya you're talking about? At the same time, Kobayashi Ritsao and Akane Kubo Momo, who came to the Izakaya despite heavy rain, stood outside the door holding umbrellas, but in front of Akane Kubateo's forehead, the few small drops of water slowly slid down to the tip of her nose, and then fell to the ground. When she raised her head and looked at the Izakaya in front of her, she couldn't help but feel a little confused. Obviously, she had no idea that a second-ranked member of the 10 elites like Kobayashi Ryodan would often come to a small place like this during this period. Yes, this is it. Don't worry, the owner of this Izakaya was once a 5-star hotel chef. As long as you let him show you a little bit, I guarantee that you will have some insights on the souffle issue. After saying that, Xiaolin Ringtong quickly opened the door and walked in. Momo Akane behind her was a little hesitant, but because it was still raining heavily and she thought it was coming, she could only grit her teeth and follow closely. Chapter 33 Difficulties. A cup of fragrant scented tea in the dense water vapor. There's always a hazy memory at this moment. Irina, who had just taken a sip of jasmine tea, suddenly saw two figures. One, she is a mature and steady royal sister. The other one is an innocent and curious little lolly. The one who is a royal sister is, of course, Kobayashi Ryodan, a regular at the Izakaya, and the little lolly who is holding a stuffed animal and has a pair of round eyes, always looking around, is the current 4th seed of Tatsuki Academy's top 10, Akane Kubo Momo. Seeing them, Irina, a junior, hurriedly greeted them. Irina, I really didn't expect that. Tonight, you will come to the Izakaya before me. Ringtong. Kobayashi, who had just entered the Izakaya, sat elegantly next to Irina. Although she is always carefree in character, she exudes a kind of majesty all over her body. At the same time, Akane Kubimamo was always holding the puppet tightly with both hands, looking at Irina with a somewhat critical look. After a while, he nodded slightly, which was a response to her. Even when she is chatting with Xiaolin Gentian, she always chirps like a bird, feeling particularly outgoing and lively. However, people who are familiar with her know that she is not very talkative in front of strangers or people with whom she has a normal relationship. It's raining heavily. In the end, this can't stop you from coming to the Izakaya, right? Zhang Fan stood up for a moment, then came to Xiaolin Gentian and said with a soft smile, "Shopkeeper. Zhang, don't say any more polite words, right? Let me introduce to you. This is my classmate Akane Kubo Momo, who is currently the 4th member of the top 10. She's best at cooking desserts. Don't look at her petite figure and frail appearance, but even I have to be afraid of her when it comes to cooking." Kobayashi Ringtong introduced Akane Kubimamo directly in front of Zhang Fan. Zhang Fan was stunned. Then, he focused his attention on Akane Kubimamo. Maybe it was because she was relatively short and not very lively in character, so Zhang Fan didn't pay much attention to her at first. After a careful inspection, he discovered that the little lolly in front of him had 2 big green eyes that kept rolling around. He could tell at a glance that she was a shy girl. At the same time, the moment she saw Zhang Fan, Akane Kubamo's eyes never left him. She just kept staring at him. How to say, indeed, as Kobayashi Ryodan said, he is quite handsome, but Akane Kubateo must be skeptical about his abilities. After all, judging from the name of Zhang Fan, he should belong to the Celestial Dynasty, right? Although Xianchao's cuisine is world famous, it is definitely number 1 in the entire culinary world. But, a Chinese man, can he understand French desserts? Can he make a souffle dessert that delays internal collapse the moment it's freshly baked? On these points, Akane Kubo Momo couldn't help but think deeply. Shopkeeper. Zhang, I'm coming to the Izakaya this time. The main thing is to ask you to make a souffle dessert. I wonder, can you make it now? Then, seeing the two of them sizing each other up, but being indifferent to each other, Ringtong Kobayashi had no choice but to interject. Souffle, this is an Izakaya, not a dessert shop, and instead of eating some snacks and something to warm you up this late at night, you want to eat dessert instead. When he heard that Kobayashi Ryodan wanted him to make souffle desserts, Zhang Fan, who had just looked away, immediately felt ashamed, but then, he thought that Akukubo Momo's best cooking was desserts, so he vaguely understood something. Oops, please, I know your Izakaya has an unwritten rule. As Long as there are ready-made ingredients or whatever you can do, you can cook according to the needs of the diners. So, can you see if you can? I know how ridiculous it is to order desserts at an izakaya, but words spoken out are like water thrown out, and it is difficult to take them back. In order not to embarrass himself in front of Akinakubo Momo, Kobayashi Ringtong has no choice but to risk his face. All right, who told you that you are God? Not to mention souffle desserts are not difficult to make. Anyway, there wasn't much business tonight, and I couldn't close up early for a while, so I simply followed Kobayashi Ryuden's wishes and made souffle desserts. So, after thinking about it, Zhang Fan rolled up his sleeves again and prepared to turn around and return to the cooking table. Actually, we have one more request. The souffle dessert you make must be left for 1 minute after it comes out of the oven. The entire inside of the souffle is still intact and will not collapse. Seeing that Zhang Fan's home was about to prepare, the anxious Akane Kubamo quickly stood up and said, isn't this difficult? On the side, hearing such an excessive request, Arena almost spit out her scented tea. You know, souffle itself is world-renowned for its light, airy feel, and it has also been poetically described as a gossamer-like foam cloud. The reason is that the water vapor evaporated from the batter foam during baking increases the internal pressure and further expands the bubbles. So to sum up, it is the dual effects of air and water vapor that create the cloud-like lightness of souffle. But souffle is not like most breads, which can rely on starch and gluten proteins to strengthen its structure. Instead, it relies more on the air pressure in the bubbles. Therefore, just cut through the bubbles, the gas inside will escape quickly and it will collapse. You don't even need to cut it. The souffle will collapse very quickly. Of course, this combination of contradictions is not only the charm of souffle, but also the biggest challenge of the entire dessert. As expected of the 10 heroes of Yuanayu, as soon as you come up, you will find a difficult problem for me. Hearing Akane Kubamo's request, Zhang Fan, who was about to start cooking, suddenly froze. No, can't think about it. After all, it is necessary to have a sense of flowing air and to be able to withstand the pressure of the air without quickly collapsing. This is a very contradictory idea in itself. Seeing Zhang Fan with a troubled expression, Akane Kubamo couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. It's a bit difficult, but I can still make this kind of souffle. Zhang Fan thought for a while and then said calmly, real. When Akinakubo Momo heard this, her eyes couldn't help but light up. Chapter 34 The Transcendent Souffle Dessert. Thing. It's all man-made, although the dishes are made by people. Each ingredient actually has its own temperament. For example, take the 1,000-layer pancake. Each piece of pie crust will have its own idea, and novices will always have to stumble a few times at the beginning. Another example is the various shredded dishes. If you are not careful, they will turn into various failed versions. Candied Haws. Therefore, every seemingly simple dish actually hides some difficulties. Souffle. How to prevent it from collapsing within 1 minute. Actually, in this problem many chefs find it extremely difficult, but in Zhang Fan's eyes, or in the eyes of Alice Nakari, who is good at molecular cuisine, they will all find it easy. It's nothing more than adding a gelatin powder for stabilization. Well, that's it. Gelatin powder. It's really not my style of cooking to use this kind of thing. Returning to the cooking table, Zhang Fan took a deep breath and then muttered to himself. It is said that a successful souffle has extremely strict requirements on details, so all materials must be prepared before making it: butter, egg, white sugar, flour. First of all, these 4 things are essential. 2. The izakaya is temporarily out of fruits and nuts. I only have some chocolate I bought in the supermarket a few days ago, so you don't mind making a chocolate-flavored souffle? Of course I don't mind. You can do whatever you want, Akane Kubateo quickly responded. Okay then. Let's officially begin. After saying that, Zhang Fan finally got busy, but he first preheated the oven and then took out a dozen small cups that were relatively heat-resistant. Use a small brush to first apply a layer of softened butter, then resmear it on the inner wall of the small cup, then sprinkle some white sugar and pour out the excess. Once ready, place all the small cups in the refrigerator to chill heat and melt the small pieces of chocolate. Add butter and beaten egg yolks in sequence. Mix well and set aside. Add lemon juice to the egg whites. Add the sugar in 3 batches, and beat with an electric egg beater. When adding sugar for the last time, add cornstarch at the same time, and keep whipping the meringue until it reaches a hard peak with straight peaks. Divide the meringue into 2 portions, Add 1/3 of the portion into the chocolate batter, and beat evenly. At last the remaining 2/3 portion continue adding it and stir until it becomes a mousse. Is it my imagination? Although it's done in a decent way, it's still a normal way of making souffle, right? From beginning to end, there was nothing eye-catching about Zhang Fan's whole process. This made Akane Kubo Momo, who was watching quietly next to him, inevitably feel a sense of disappointment and helplessness. Peach, keep watching. I believe that in the end, his souffle dessert will surprise you. When Xiaolin Zhendon saw this, he couldn't help but murmur in his heart, but when I think about Zhang Fan, he never speaks big words, he is a man of his word. Therefore, she could only focus on Zhang Fan again, wanting to see how he completed the fleur dessert. After the rest, Zhang Fan, prepare the meringue, fill them all into a small cup, scrape the pile into the shape of a hill, and finally smooth the surface with a knife. Bake at 150 degrees Celsius in the middle and lower racks of the oven for a full 20 minutes. During the baking process, all the soufflés will slowly expand. Obviously, the process of waiting for the release of soufflé is like pursuing the person you love. The process is long, but the ending is very sweet. Finally, under the expectation of everyone with the sound of ding, a dozen soufflés are ready to be freshly baked, coming soon. I hope it won't collapse when I take it out. Ring tong. Kobayashi was looking at the soufflé dessert in the oven, which was finally about to be baked, and couldn't help but stare with his round eyes, seemingly full of anticipation and nervousness. Next to her, Akane Kubo Momo was also watching closely, although she always felt unsure in her heart, because the soufflé dessert that Zhang Fan just made was extremely ordinary in terms of its preparation and ingredients. But for some reason, she really hopes that this soufflé will not collapse. Afterwards, all the soufflé desserts were brought out the moment they came into contact with the air. Their golden, slightly caramel-colored appearance did not change at all, nor did they collapse at a speed visible to the naked eye at first glance. You will recognize that this is a classic French dessert. Look closely, the upper crust is a bit tough. On the lower level, there is still some humidity. The entire lightweight soufflé is like a fluffy, completely unpredictable cloud. Wow, it really won't collapse. And this soufflé dessert feels so soft and bouncy, especially the curvaceous shape similar to the mounds, which also fully expresses a concept of cuteness, which makes me feel like it's almost cute. Could it be that this Izakaya owner also has a strong design talent? Seeing all the soufflés in front of me looking so unique and cute, Akane Kubo Momo's childlike innocence was instantly enchanted, and her eyes began to sparkle. Cute. This is a very abstract concept, but cute things are often regarded as an aesthetic tendency. Akane Kubo Momo has been portrayed as liking cute things since she first appeared. Perhaps it's the cute element that allows her to show her inner world and her love for life, making it easier for others to resonate with her. Because of this, so many people like her cute dessert dishes. Maybe even she herself doesn't know her own image is actually closely related to cuteness. She has big eyes, a round face, and a petite figure. These physical characteristics naturally make her look very cute. In addition, her clothes and accessories often have cute elements, such as a hairstyle similar to cat ears, often holding a stuffed animal, and so on. Therefore, although it is the 4th seed among the top 10 and in the original plot, there is no role, but it is precisely this kind of role that makes Zhang Fan have a good impression. 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. It's been a full minute, and none of the soufflés have collapsed yet, counting to the last 60 seconds, when he saw that the soufflés in front of him still looked like they were freshly baked. Ring tong. Kobayashi said excitedly. Miracle. What a miracle. I just wanted to have high hopes for Zhang Fan, but he actually realized it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35. The Mysteries Revealed. Medieval period in the romantic country of France. Soufflé is an out-and-out luxury product. Ordinary people cannot afford it. Only nobles are eligible to enjoy it. But soufflé is not a product of collusion with the aristocracy. On the contrary, it has its own positive metaphor against extravagance. Until now, soufflé has always been an internet celebrity dessert and a dark horse in the dessert category on Dianping. However, because soufflé is easy to collapse, it became the cake that no photography was allowed to take. Usually you can only eat it occasionally in some high-end Western restaurants. and it is probably difficult to see it from roadside vendors. Subsequently, an anxious Akane Kubimamo, she first broke off a piece of souffle dessert, opened her mouth slightly, and then slowly put it into her mouth to savor it unexpectedly. As soon as I bit into it, the soft souffle filling inside actually made a pop sound and flowed down the throat. In an instant, mellow milk flavor it began to fill the nasal cavity and taste buds, making Akane Kubomomo feel shocked all over. She even felt the silky smooth texture of souffle right away. It was like a liquid that melted in the mouth, slowly spreading in her little mouth, making her feel that the taste was extremely light. At the same time, it may be that the melting is happening so quickly that its presence won't be felt anytime soon, and this extremely romantic sweet smell began to bring her consciousness gradually into a fairy tale world full of romance and cuteness, so much so just taking a small bite. Akane Kubomomo, currently the 4th member of the top 10, was completely captivated by the souffle dessert. This smell. Finally, as the swallowing action ended, Akane Kubomomo couldn't help but lick her mouth at this moment. She wanted to struggle desperately, but she still couldn't get rid of the delicious taste of souffle. No matter how much she thinks about other things, her attention will return to this delicate and silky souffle dessert. No, this feeling. Akane Kubo. Peach finally couldn't resist the taste experience brought by souffle. Her eyes rolled up, and she felt a sense of comfort and joy all over her body. Interesting, eh? Peach that can make you good at desserts, with such an intriguing expression. This souffle must be delicious, right? Next to him, Kobayashi Gentian thought to himself, even if she knew that with Zhang Fan's ability, once the dessert dishes were made, Akane Kubomomo would be particularly surprised. But when she actually saw Akane Kubomomo in front of her, completely unable to control herself due to an ordinary souffle dessert, and was completely ruined, she couldn't help but feel extremely surprised. Immediately afterwards, she was so greedy that she couldn't hold it any longer. He quickly stretched out his hand to pick up a small piece of souffle dessert, and then tasted it as well. The taste between ice cream and cake instantly put Kobayashi Gentian's mood between sweetness and happiness, allowing the sweetness to penetrate through. In the process of tasting souffle, different flavors of souffle will definitely bring different sensory experiences to people. Just like a chocolate-flavored souffle, it brings a slightly bitter and slightly astringent taste, so just taking a bite, Kobayashi Gentian was immediately fascinated by the crispy shell. Needless to say, the interior of a souffle, it must be very fluffy and soft. It doesn't mean that Zhang Fan tasted bad because he delayed the collapse time. Moreover, the rich milky flavor makes Kobayashi Gentian want to stop. I always feel that it is similar to the oil return of pound cake, but it has a different flavor. Perhaps even she herself couldn't imagine that Zhang Fan's souffle dessert, although simple in preparation, could be so unforgettable just by its taste and texture. So, this is all. After adding the caster sugar, beat with an electric mixer at medium speed, it starts out completely liquid, and slowly becomes thicker as the whisk is stirred. Continue whipping, and the liquid will completely disappear. What finally appears is a slightly expanded egg white paste. If you beat it for a little longer, less clear lines will gradually appear. If you lift the egg beater, the traces of dripping cream will not disappear quickly. At first, I thought I added lemon juice. It may have a stabilizing effect, but it turns out it is used to remove the fishy smell of protein. So, the key to solving the shrinkage problem lies in whipping the protein and setting the temperature and time of the oven. Huh? Strange. Did I miss something else? At this time, Kobayashi looked at the souffle dessert in his hand and couldn't help but feel a little startled. Corn starch. Zhang Fan stood up with a smile and continued, solve the retraction problem. The key point is actually the cornstarch added at the end. Starch helps to stabilize the internal structure of the protein. Of course, if the cornstarch is added too late, it will act as a load and squash the bubbles. How to master the amount and timing of starch requires a pastry chef to try for a long time. Starch, its stabilizing effect is reflected in two aspects: suspension stability, gel stability. These stability are determined by the structure and properties of starch. First of all, starch has some unique structural characteristics, such as helical structure, branched chain configuration, molecular weight, etc. These characteristics enable starch molecules to form a network structure in solution, thereby maintaining the stability of starch. That is to say, analyze it from a professional perspective. The collapse problem of souffle is that the particles or granules in the suspension will sink due to gravity. However, after adding starch, Due to the stretching and bridging effect of its molecular chain, it can prevent the particles or granules from sinking, thereby maintaining the stability of the suspension. Therefore it sounds like it's because of starch. Kobayashi Gentian's pupils couldn't help but gradually get bigger. Only then did she realize that Zhang Fan's talents and abilities were so strong when it came to the professionalism of desserts. For some reason, she didn't like desserts in the past because of the sweet and greasy smell. She could easily feel disgusted. But after tasting Zhang Fan's soufflé dessert, she felt it was not enough. In fact, the filling of the soufflé can still remain in the mouth after the shape is removed. This feeling made her feel that all descriptions of soufflé desserts were pale, and it made her feel extremely satisfied when she tasted it for the first time. Chapter 36 Curious Akinakubo Momo. Come, I specially made a few more for you to eat. Holding 2 pieces of soufflé, Zhang Fan came to Arena and faced Shasha and said lightly, "Really, Arena?" After hearing Zhang Fan's words, couldn't help but be stunned. Certainly. Then, thank you. Then, finally, Arena, who rarely said thank you to others, blushed again. But after she took the soufflé, she ignored everything and took a big bite right in front of Zhang Fan. Seeing this, Face Shasha took the soufflé from Zhang Fan's hand and tasted it greedily. Everyone has a princess dream in their hearts. Whether they are innocent little girls or mature and steady women, they have all dreamed of being a beautiful princess wearing a crown and live in a magnificent palace, surrounded and pampered by everyone. Although this dream seems unrealistic, it is also a manifestation of girls yearning in pursuit of beautiful things. Thus Akinakubo Momo is no exception. She also had a princess dream when she was a child in her eyes. In those fairy tales with cute elements, if you want to marry a handsome prince, then you must first become a cute princess. Only at this moment the Prince Charming in my heart has not appeared yet. I was first conquered by the cute soufflé talent in front of me, obviously. Zhang Fan's desserts are still the same as those snacks and home-cooked dishes he made when he was running an izakaya, which made many girls present want to come back. Finally, only a short while passed. A dozen or so soufflé desserts were all eaten by them in this way. Not even a bit of oil residue was left. Shopkeeper, the solution to the shrinkage problem lies in starch. So, instead of a cornstarch, could I use tapioca starch? Afterwards, Akane Kubota, who had eaten 3 soufflés, blinked a few times, and then asked Zhang Fan curiously, how to say, although both are starch, there are still some differences. The taste of cornstarch is similar to that of flour, except that it feels soft and has less elasticity. Food made from tapioca starch is chewy, elastic and soft, so actually using tapioca starch may have a better stabilizing effect, but don't just look at the effects. Soufflé is more about the delicate and soft taste. Corn starch not only stabilizes the meringue, but also ensures the soft and delicate texture of the soufflé, and if you use tapioca starch, it will enhance the elasticity of the taste, which will make the soufflé dessert lose its original softness. Yak. Then, there is another problem. I just don't need lemon juice. Can I use white vinegar? Where's the rice vinegar? It's also okay. No, you are one of the 10 heroes of Yuanayu. Don't you understand whether to use lemon juice or white vinegar or rice vinegar? Looking at Akane Kubamo, who suddenly became talkative, Zhang Fan couldn't help but be slightly startled. In fact, a somewhat introverted person like Akinakubo Momo, when facing strange environments and strange people, you will feel a slight sense of fear, but once she starts to feel comfortable with the surrounding environment and people, she will be more willing to express her thoughts and feelings. Therefore, at the beginning, when facing this izakaya and the shop owner, she would be reticent and have a somewhat cold attitude, but gradually, as she spent a little time with Zhang Fan, and after seeing Zhang Fan's abilities, she inevitably began to admire and worship him. At the same time inside, she was also very eager to talk to Zhang Fan and share her thoughts and opinions with him. When seeing Akane Kubo Momo, who couldn't wait to chat with Zhang Fan, Kobayashi Gentian was a little confused. You know, there are really not many people in this world who can make Akinakubo Momo willing to take the initiative to talk to her. Result: a soufflé dessert in her cold heart be completely melted. Cool, this Zhang Fan is indeed very charming. Involuntarily, she sighed deeply. Right, of course I understand. It's just, I just want to know more about how to make this dessert. Looking at Zhang Fan, who looked dumbfounded, Akane Kubamo felt a little embarrassed. She quickly hugged the doll in her arms tightly and buried her head very low, as if she really wanted to avoid Zhang Fan's eyes in this way. It is said that Lolita has three treasures: clear voice, soft body, and easy to push down, a petite and cute figure like Akina Kubo Momo. Soft short hair and shy expression can simply arouse any boy's protective desire. As a result, Zhang Fan could only shrug helplessly and replied, "Actually, this dessert is not very difficult. With your own strength, if you go back and do it a few more times, and put more thought into it, you should be able to understand the secret." Then. Why? During the expansion process of souffle, cracks will appear on the top surface, but yours doesn't and is even very smooth. What? Don't you understand this question? I beg you, just tell me. Looking at those watery eyes, which seemed to be full of curiosity, Zhang Fan only curled up the corners of his mouth and smiled bitterly. An iconic souffle dessert, it should be that during the expansion process, there will be undulating waves, like a shell, and even a slight arch. As for the problem of cracks, you don't have to worry about it. After all, it doesn't have much impact. Certainly, if you leave it alone, let it grow uncontrollably in the oven, and it will eventually affect the beauty of the souffle. If you want to avoid cracking, add the beaten egg whites into the chocolate paste in 3 batches and mix. Each time, use a spatula to lift it from the bottom up and stir it to the top to avoid defoaming. Stir until the egg whites are no longer visible. That is, you can see some lines falling down like a ribbon, and the batter will be shiny. Now listening to Zhang Fan's explanation, Akane Kubo Momo kept her eyes open and stared at him from the excitement and joy in her round eyes. You can tell that she seems to be enjoying this moment. Chapter 37 Gifts. Tea-soaked rice, grilled eel, Kanto cooking, tempura, egg custard, stir-fried assorted vegetables. Finally, order another pan-fried dumpling, no spicy. After finishing the souffle dessert, the greedy Kobayashi Gentian ordered a few more dishes from Zhang Fan. Zhang Fan always had the urge to complain about her appetite. He really wanted to know how big her stomach was and why she could hold so much food every time, but on the other hand he couldn't wait for the diners who came to the Izakaya. If everyone can eat as well as she does, his business will be even more prosperous. So after that, he didn't say much, but started to cook these dishes according to Kobayashi Ringtong's ordering requirements. It's different from other grilled eels. Zhang Fan's grilled eel dish looks like a snappable fish fillet, but it is actually slightly chewy as soon as you take a bite. The delicious taste is faintly in your mouth. It is not rich and colorful, but it is also particularly delicate and refreshing. At the same time, in the process of handling eels, Zhang Fan is also accustomed to using a living technique by destroying the nerves of the eel early and bleeding it. The best condition of the fish is preserved, making the fish more delicious, fresh, fragrant, clear, sweet, crisp. This is grilled eel, the most ideal taste. What excites Kobayashi Gentian even more is the salty and sweet special sauce, which is also garnished with sesame seeds, pepper and salt, which adds a bit of freshness at this time. The little Lolita Akane Kubo Momo was hugging the puppet tightly next to her. She couldn't help looking at Kobayashi Ringtong's devouring appearance with a bit of contempt. Then he took the initiative to move his position and keep a certain distance from her. Perhaps there was a real reason why she ignored treading Kobayashi Gentian's request and didn't want to go out with her. After all, this foodie really eats every time he goes to a restaurant. Peach, why are you so far away from me? Come on, sit closer and I'll give you another grilled eel. You don't know how delicious the crispy eel skin and soft but not falling apart fish meat taste, especially the mellow and non-greasy taste, which almost took away my soul. And the rich special sauce does not dominate at all, but rather maintains the original taste of the ingredients for the eel. Sure enough, it tastes really good. At this time, Kobayashi Ringtong chewed all the eel meat in his mouth and swallowed it while she was eating. She looked at Akina Kubo Momo, who was hiding far away beside her, and couldn't help but smile. Don't want. After eating 3 pieces of souffle dessert, I'm full. Hearing this, Akane Kubo Momo refused directly. Full? I just ate souffle. Your appetite is a bit small. Forget it. It's okay if you don't want to eat it. These are all the dishes prepared by shopkeeper Zhang. It's not bad for me to enjoy them all by myself. After saying that, Xiaolin Ringtong continued to eat with his head buried in his mouth. It seems that in front of delicious food, good friends like Akina Kubo Momo can become less important. Early spring rain with a deep loneliness. Originally, in this season, it shouldn't rain so heavily, but accompanied by the roar of thunder and flashes of lightning, the downpour still brought a chill to the entire city. And under this baptism, the night of the whole world seems to become fresher and darker. Although Arina and Hisako are both students at the same school as Ritsao and Momo, their relationship is not that familiar, thus the air in the Izakaya was always filled with an awkward atmosphere at the same time. Perhaps because she couldn't stand Kobayashi Ringtong's eating habits, Akane Kubo Momo, a little lolly, had no choice but to sit in the seat closest to Zhang Fan. Occasionally, she would secretly glance at Zhang Fan. Seeing him idle again, he crossed his arms in front of his chest and stood blankly by the cooking table. Sometimes there was a faint smile on his face, which made her heart flutter. Finally, Zhang Fan seemed to feel Akukubateo's gaze on him, and Zhang Fan turned to look at her and looked at her. Can't help it, Akane Kubimamo was a little panicked. She hurriedly lowered her head and went down, not daring to look at Zhang Fan anymore. Shopkeeper. Zhang, there's something I've been paying attention to for a long time. Did your right hand get burned? It doesn't look very serious. Then, Zhang Fan's reddish right hand suddenly appeared in Akane Kubateo's mind, and she mustered up the courage to speak. It's out of the way. Zhang Fan just nodded after hearing this. Akane Kubamo could only raise her head again and stared blankly at Zhang Fan's right hand for a while. Finally, after hesitating for a short while, she took off the hands of the stuffed bear Butch in her arms and handed it to him personally. For you, these are the insulated gloves I always use. Zhang Fan was stunned for a moment when he saw the pair of pink heat insulating gloves appearing in front of him. Although many diners who come to the Izakaya will be polite in front of them and dare not make any mistakes, after all, with his superb cooking skills, he is naturally able to win the respect and admiration of many people in this world where food is paramount. But it was only the first time that he met the little lolly in front of him, and she wanted to give something as a gift. Although this kind of insulated gloves is not very valuable, it can be seen as a kind of affection. Akane Kubo, you'd better keep it for yourself. My burn is not serious, and I was not careful when I was cooking. After saying that, Zhang Fan declined. Beside Arina hasn't left yet. She blushed pretty, sitting there in an awkward and complicated mood, not knowing what to say. After all, Zhang Fan must have been completely unexpected by her coming this time, which is why he made the reincarnation spring roll dish in a hurry without adequate preparation. Really, does it have to be that kind of cooking? Arina kept muttering in her heart. She must have mistakenly thought that Zhang Fan would cook the most perfect dish at all costs for her, so thinking of this, she was more or less moved. Shopkeeper. Zhang, please accept it. Think of this pair of insulated gloves as a gift from you to help me solve the retraction problem of souffle desserts. Seeing Zhang Fan who refused, Akane Kubimamo felt a little disappointed. Okay, even if you have intentions. Zhang Fan could see the fleeting look of despair, so he was silent at first, and then he no longer had the heart to refuse, so he had no choice but to take the pair of insulated gloves from Akane Kubimamo's hands. Seeing that Zhang Fan actually accepted the things, the faint blush on Akane Kubateo's face finally dissipated, and she revealed a sweet smile instead. Chapter 38 Their Respective Pursuits. Late at night, full of mystery and tranquility, the heavy rain finally stopped, and the two girls, Ritsao Kobayashi and Momo Akane Kubo, who had eaten their fill, finally left the Izakaya. Either the problem that had been bothering him for a long time was finally solved, or maybe Zhang Fan was extremely charming. Akane Kubateo's face was filled with a happy smile along the way. On the other side, Kobayashi Gentian looked less excited. Her belly was a little bulging, and she ended up burping unexpectedly. Oh, what a pleasure. Thinking about it, shopkeeper Zhang's cooking skills seem to have improved again. I feel very satisfied with this meal. After recalling the deliciousness of all the dishes just now, Kobayashi Ringtong couldn't help but exclaimed, Gentian, thank you very much this time. If it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't have known that there was such an interesting Izakaya on this food street. Holding the stuffed bear that had lost both hands, and glancing at Kobayashi Gentian again, Akane Kubo Momo found that she was no longer so annoying. Peach, let me tell you, your performance today seems to be too enthusiastic. I just took the initiative to talk to shopkeeper Zhang, but at the end I even gave him a pair of insulated gloves. Seeing the often absent-minded Akane Kubo Momo, Kobayashi Ryuden's golden eyes couldn't help but roll around, and then he couldn't help but joke, shopkeeper Zhang, he is a chef worthy of my respect. Holding the stuffed bear tightly, Akane Kubamo said with a blush, respect, I'm Afraid it's not that simple, right? Seeing this, Xiaolin Ringtong asked back with a faint smile. Akina Kubo Momo knew what this meant, and she glared at Regenten angrily, but her face turned redder. At first, I must have been dubious about his ability, but the amazing souffle dessert at the end moved me deeply. Only in the field of desserts, to be honest, I am willing to call him the strongest dessert chef. The strongest. This is a bit. Kobayashi Ringtong was stunned. He really didn't expect that Akane Kubimamo would speak so highly of Zhang Fan, whom he had only met once, but thinking about the taste of the souffle just now, she felt relieved. After all, even she herself felt that every dish Zhang Fan cooked was full of amazing features. It seems that no matter how ordinary the food is, it will become completely different in his hands. After school starts, you and I are both third-year students in the higher education department. Then, Kobayashi Gentian asked tentatively, so during this period of time, Tao, do you have any plans for your future life? No, I didn't think that far ahead. Even though we are all top 10 now, it's still not certain whether we will be able to survive until graduation. Looking through Yuan Iu's history books, I can't count those people who became top 10 like us but failed to graduate due to various reasons with both hands. So, right now I just want to do my best in everything and not leave any regrets to myself. Akane Kubateo shook her head, her face more solemn than ever. Peach, tell you the truth, I used to think that after graduation, I would go on an adventure alone to find game ingredients that have never been discovered in the world, but in the past month, I kept getting along with Zhang Fan, and gradually found the meaning of life from him. So, I plan to wait until I graduate next year and then choose to work in the Izakaya. While following in his footsteps, I will also strive to become the most proud chef around him. Looking at Akina Kubo Momo, Kobayashi Ringtong told her all his thoughts. Real or fake? Obviously, Akina Kubo Momo was shocked after hearing Kobayashi Ritsuo's thoughts. Undeniable, those who successfully graduate from Totsuki Academy are all outstanding. After graduation, most of these people can become leaders in the entire Neon Country cuisine industry, and even stand at the forefront of the cuisine industry. Although they all go their separate ways and make different choices after graduation, they often achieve great results. For example, 10 heroes like Kojiro Oshinomiya. After graduation, he decided to go to France and run a French restaurant by himself. As a result, in a short period of time, he received the Achievement of Prosper Medal. Therefore, as long as the Yuan Iu top 10 graduates, they will be popular in the entire industry. Many high-end restaurants, 5-star hotels, food suppliers, etc. will rush to attract them, so it was unavoidable that Momo Akina Kubo was shocked when she heard that Kobayashi Ritsuo wanted to work in an Izakaya after graduation. But after calming down, she also knew that Kobayashi Gentian's decision was definitely not impulsive. In my opinion, you want to work at an Izakaya. It's just that you're craving for shopkeeper Zhang's body. Well, you're craving for his food, right? After all, as long as you live in an Izakaya as a chef for a long time, you can eat the food he cooks every day. Seeing through Kobayashi Ritsuo's little thoughts, Akane Kubimamo replied without any concealment. Peach, if you see it, don't say it. Hey, anyway, I see countless possibilities in him. If you choose to work in an Izakaya, you may not be any worse than others by then. After saying that, Kobayashi Gentian quickened his pace and walked ahead in a happy mood. Behind her, Akane Kubo Momo was slightly startled. After looking at the retreating figure, she couldn't help but lower her head and began to think. 12 o'clock in the morning. The Izakaya is finally closed. After 2 nights of getting along, Irina's impression of Zhang Fan has changed a lot. She raised her head slightly and glanced at him, then said softly, Zhang Fan, are you getting ready to close? Right about there. Yeah, sure. Enough. The 5-hour operating time of an Izakaya is too short. After complaining for a while, Irina was ready to get up and leave the Izakaya at this time. She must have a lot of things in her heart that she wants to say to him, Zhang Fan, but time flies by so fast, so she can't delay his closing time and rest. Right, but before leaving, she still took a deep look at Zhang Fan and said, actually, with your ability, there is no need to run an Izakaya. If you have ideas and greater pursuits, I can go back and tell Grandpa and ask him to hire you as a teacher at Totsuki Academy. No, a professor. In this way, after Yuan Iu starts school, you will be able to achieve a greater career on this big stage. Drop This sentence Arena left the izakaya without looking back, and as she and Hisako left, the entire izakaya closed. Chapter 39 New Sign-in Rewards. In a typical izakaya, the wooden tables, chairs and various details exude a warm and nostalgic atmosphere. On the wall, in addition to an old-fashioned wall clock, there are paintings, paper fans, etc., making people feel like they are in a small town in the classical era. Most of the diners who come here come to drink immediately after ordering, and some only eat food without drinking because of Zhang's chef's cooking skills. Then, when I am alone, I usually read silently on my mobile phone, comics, newspapers, and novels, and sometimes I talk to the shopkeeper. As for groups of diners, just drink and chat together. As for Zhang Fan's izakaya, the best-selling item currently is barbecue, which is generally divided into two flavors: sauce flavor and salt flavor. Sometimes, when diners order barbecue and are too lazy to choose between these two flavors, or want to try something else, they will say that the taste is left to Zhang Fan. Therefore, in the izakaya, you can also find ketchup-flavored, mayonnaise-flavored barbecued meats, etc. All in such a rich selection of food and wine. Every time diners come to the izakaya, they can enjoy a feast for their taste buds, and at the same time, they can also feel the unique charm brought by Zhang Fan's cuisine. In fact, for Zhang Fan, who came from time to time on the first day, you can get acquainted with Kobayashi Gentian, and become neighbors with Makachichinka. These two things that seem to be coincidences, but were destined to happen, naturally made him realize that as a time traveler, he must not be separated from this world. On the one hand, the izakaya he runs, as his cooking skills gradually gain recognition from people, many important figures will appear. He even had a hunch that within half a year, this izakaya would be targeted by people from the WGO Food Organization. On the other hand, Totsuki Academy's influence in the entire Neon Kingdom cuisine world is actually quite terrifying. Therefore, even though he is running an izakaya here, he will eventually come into contact with them. But, no matter what, Zhang Fan actually doesn't want to go into this muddy water, just like Arena hopes that he can go to Totsuki Academy and find another career instead of staying in an izakaya. However, in his eyes, he did not approve of Totsuki Academy's survival of the fittest education method. On the contrary, he felt a little disgusted, although after passing the layers of competition, those who stay will be elite-level chefs. These chefs all have excellent cooking skills and unique skills, but no matter how powerful they are, they actually have their own weaknesses and problems. Some people may have bad luck, or they may fail once or twice because of a certain shortcoming in themselves, but just one failure will directly kill their future hopes and completely destroy their future. Secondly, the entire academy is too focused on competition and winning or losing. This will also cause many students to neglect other aspects of growth in order to achieve good results, and even aggravate various conflicts between students. Even though there are relatively fair shiji rules, efforts are made to reconcile and restrict the forces of all parties, but in the end, all the conflicts and problems in the entire academy finally broke out when the top 10 collectively defected and the commander-in-chief resigned sadly. Therefore, Zhang Fan, who is familiar with the plot, will naturally not choose to develop in Totsuki Academy. Ling Dong, host, successfully signed in once. Ling Dong, 4. This sign-in, the host will get the recipe Wensi tofu, the special recipe Shanglong dumplings, and the ordinary kitchen utensil Chinese iron pot 1. After busy work, the system's voice is finally loud again. The sign-in rewards are similar to yesterday's. The first is this Chinese iron pot. This kind of iron pot is a unique pot in China. The material is iron, which has high durability and corrosion resistance. It's also quite durable and can last for years or even decades if taken care of properly. To put it mildly, even though people are gone, this iron pot may still be there. Iron itself is a good thermal conductor, so its heat transfer performance is also very good during the cooking process. The iron pan can quickly transfer heat to the ingredients, making cooking more even and efficient. At the same time, it has strong applicability and can be used for stir-frying, stewing, boiling, roasting, frying and other cooking methods. Of course, the only drawback is that it's too heavy. If you don't have strong arm strength and wrist strength, and are not proficient in the skill of turning the pot, it will be difficult to stir-fry the ingredients. Then, there is the Wensi tofu recipe. Although it feels weird to eat Wensi tofu in an izakaya, but in fact, Zhang Fan's izakaya has an unwritten rule. That is, diners can order any dish as long as they have ready-made ingredients or can cook it themselves. So presumably for this reason, the business of the izakaya has been booming since its opening. After all, the most important thing about an izakaya is casualness, which means freedom. If you don't even have the dishes you want to eat, it will naturally ruin the interest of many diners. As everyone knows, there are 8 major cuisines in Chinese cuisine, namely, Sichuan food, Shandong cuisine, Huaiyan cuisine, Cantonese food, Zhejiang cuisine, Fujian cuisine, Hunan cuisine, Anhui cuisine. Among them, Huaiyan cuisine is the most particular about knife skills, especially its melon carvings, which are famous all over the world. The most representative dish is wensi tofu, which can cut tofu as fine as hair. According to legend, during the Qianlong period, there was a monk named Wensi who practiced in Shining Temple in Yongzhou. Since there are many Buddhist laymen going to this temple to burn incense and worship Buddha, the supply of vegetarian food in the temple has become a problem, so he developed tofu that can be easily changed into dishes and formed a tofu vegetarian banquet. One of them uses soft tofu as the main ingredient, and is served with tofu soup made from golden needles, fungus, green vegetables, shredded bamboo shoots, shredded mushrooms, etc. It tastes good, delicious, sweet, and endless aftertaste. At the same time, it looks very good in terms of appearance, so it attracts many faithful men and women to come to the temple to taste it. Later one day, Emperor Qianlong went south to the south of the Yangtze River. When passing by Yongzhou, he heard that Shining Temple was very beautiful, so he went to visit it. As a result, he was very satisfied after tasting this dish, so he included it in the palace cuisine and renamed it wensi tofu. True, there are thousands of dishes in the world, but not every dish is easy, and you may not be able to make it just by following the recipe. For example, this wensi tofu dish, knife skills, heat, and seasoning are all technical tasks and require the guidance of a professional chef. Then you have to continue to accumulate experience, and you can finally learn it after long-term practice. Wensi tofu, it's a pretty good Chinese dish. After muttering something to himself, Zhang Fan turned his attention back to that special recipe, Shenglong dumplings. Chapter 40: Shenglong dumplings. Dragon. It is a sacred and majestic symbol. In Chinese culture, it represents rights, dignity, glory, etc. The Shenglong dumplings are based on the image of a dragon. Through ingenious production techniques and careful decoration, a very unique dish is formed. Lots of dishes. It's in the presentation design. It will combine multiple elements such as ingredients, color, composition, and so on. Even the decorations are decorated with herbs, fruits, vegetables, etc. And metal or wooden tableware is used to enhance the natural feel of the dishes, but these things only improve the visual effect of the dish and make the whole dish look more attractive. Compared with these static and beautiful dishes, the reason why Shenglong dumplings is unique is that it is a dish with dynamic beauty. Yes, Shenglong dumplings, it's a dumpling that moves. The secret seems complicated, but it actually uses 2 kinds of dumpling skins with different densities. In this way, when steaming, the 2 types of dumpling skins expand to different degrees, causing the entire dumpling to be forced to move. Interesting. The so-called special recipe, many of them are dishes from the world of Little Master of China. It reminds me that in the Guangzhou dumpling competition in the original plot, Liu Pleiades used this dish called Shenglong dumplings to defeat the giant dragon dumplings made by the Dumpling Brothers and successfully won the championship. Therefore, in Zhang Fan's opinion, this dish may be even more shocking than the previous reincarnation spring rolls. Finally, after stretching, Zhang Fan washed up and tidied up after being excited, and then fell asleep. At the same time, in Irina's room, a ray of white moonlight was shining through the window and softly shining on her pretty sleeping face. Everything in the room seemed so peaceful. But tonight a nightmare was coming quietly. Irina's body began to tremble in the darkness, and her breathing became faster and faster, as if there was an unknown fear gradually approaching her. Suddenly, a terrible sound sounded in her ears. This voice was very low and evil. "Irina, you are the most outstanding work of my life. You must obey me. Come on, come to me." She wanted to scream in fear, but her throat seemed to be blocked by something and she couldn't make a sound. Then, she saw a figure emerging from the darkness. It was a demon that she would never forget in her life, and its eyes kept flashing with evil light, and there was a cruel smile on the corner of its mouth. Finally, it stretched out its sharp claws towards Irina, trying to hold her firmly in his hand. Seeing this, Irina tried desperately to escape, but her body was frozen in place due to fear, unable to move at this moment. In despair, she heard a familiar voice calling her name, "Zhang Fan, quickly, hurry. Help, why do I have nightmares?" Irina woke up from her sleep and found that her body was shaking. Moreover, the palms of her hands were very cold and her fingertips were numb. The images from the nightmare still echoed in her mind. and the image of the demon was so clear that she could not forget it. She closed her eyes in pain, trying to drive away these horrific images, but the demon lingered in her mind like a ghost. She couldn't help but continue to tremble, and even her breathing had a stinging feeling. Perhaps at this moment of waking up, Irina longs to have someone around her to comfort her, and she also wants to find a place where she can feel safe. But it was obvious that the empty room made her fear even stronger. Helpless, she could only lift the quilt, quickly tidy up, put on a white chef's uniform again, and then came to her spacious kitchen. In the corner of the kitchen, there was a large capacity freezer, and she took out a real snapper from the freezer. Although it's frozen, the meat quality may not be very fresh anymore, but if you want to practice snapper spring rolls, you can still make do with it. Then, she imitated Zhang Fan's method and began to try making snapper spring rolls. Of course, she did not adopt the extreme method of cooking the snapper by burning the kitchen knife until it turned red. Time, it is a fluid that no one can grasp. It is silent, but it is passing through our lives all the time. Finally, when Irina bit into the prepared snapper spring rolls, she felt a particularly disgusting feeling of vomiting, and this feeling became stronger and stronger, making her extremely uncomfortable. Unable to help herself, Irina had no choice but to spit out all the snapper spring rolls she had just bitten. Really, am I unable to perfectly replicate his cooking? Is it because the freshness of the real snapper is not as good as that of Zhang Fan, who slaughtered it right away? No, it's much more than that, and his own secret sauce. And, Irina, it's so late and you're still not asleep. Unexpectedly, at this moment, an old man appeared behind her. His face was full of wrinkles and his hair was pale, but his two deep-set eyes were sharp and bright, looking particularly energetic. If you look closely, you can also find a cut scar near his right eye, which makes him look even more vicious, although this weathered face is full of wrinkles left by the years. But when facing Irina, he was still full of kindness and love. Grandfather, I had nightmares and couldn't sleep, so I had to get up and cook. After all, I won't think so much when I'm busy. Looking back, Irina explained after seeing the commander-in-chief Nakare Sinzeman. Well, it's really hard. Sinzeman could only sigh deeply when he heard this. Grandfather, how about you? It's so late. Why aren't you going to rest? It's graduation season now. I'm so busy every day because of the things I do for those graduates. How can I possibly sleep? Having said this, Nakare Sinzeman felt deeply helpless again. No way. Who is the current Nakare family? There is no successor. Oh, there is no successor. There is a complete lack of a strong young man to take his place. Later, the attentive commander-in-chief began to be curious about the cooking Irina made. He glanced at a plate of sea bream spring rolls on the table, but he couldn't help being stunned. When, Irina, are you also interested in this kind of civilian cuisine? Chapter 41. Commander-in-Chief. Look away. The commander-in-chief was fixedly staring at Irina's pretty face. No matter what the reason was, she was going to try making snapper spring rolls tonight, which was enough to make him feel very happy. Since more than 10 years ago, the entire Nakare family has experienced one after another changes, forcing this gray-haired old man to continue to hold power, but just maintaining the status and influence of the entire huge family almost cost him half his life. Therefore, seeing Irina gradually becoming more sensible, he felt a little relieved. After all, the Nakare family is in great need of a capable general, and he also needs a successor. Subsequently commander-in-chief, he pondered for a while. He first leaned on the chair, and Irina, who was waiting for him to speak, finally said slowly, "Are you developing new dishes recently?" "Yes, Grandpa, come and see, these. Our spring rolls made with real sea bream." The inspiration? No, it should be said that the prototype came from the owner of an Izakaya. After tasting the reincarnation spring rolls he made, I was particularly shocked, so I planned to use the power of God's tongue to perfectly replicate this dish, but, as you can see, Grandpa, this dish is beyond the range that God's tongue can perceive. As you wish. How can a spring roll dish conquer your tongue? The commander-in-chief changed his expression slightly. Tongue of God. On the past 10 years, it has always been an enduring topic. First, Nakare Shinichi decided to run away from home because he could not bear the curse brought by God's tongue. Afterwards, Najiri Kirito, who was deeply stimulated, began to use different methods to correct Irina's God's tongue ability. As one can imagine, he completely embarked on a path of no return. After being discovered by the commander-in-chief, Nakare Thistle was directly expelled from Tatsuki Academy, and even all information about him was deliberately erased. It can be said, curse of God's tongue, the entire Nakare family had changed more than 10 years ago. It's like the complete mirror has been broken. No matter how it is restored or repaired, a deep crack will be left. What's even more despairing is that facing the curse of God's tongue, the commander-in-chief, known as the Gourmet Demon King, feels powerless. He could only watch the tragedy happen, unable to use his own power to change everything. Of course, for the commander-in-chief who is responsible for the fate of the entire family in order to prevent Irina, who also possesses the power of God's tongue, from repeating the same fate as her mother Nakare Shinichi over the years, he has made a lot of efforts and spent a lot of energy to find dishes that can break the curse of God's tongue. Only the outcome of the matter seems to have been determined in this world. No one can conquer the tongue of God with cooking, grandfather. The thing is like this. Seeing the surprised expression on the commander-in-chief's face, Irina knew that this kind of thing needed to be explained properly, so in front of him, Irina began to talk endlessly. Sometimes he talks about how Zhang Fan can use some scraps of ingredients to turn decay into magic and make 3 kinds of Western-style fast food that completely change the taste of the ingredients. Sometimes he talks about how he uses unexpected methods to make the most delicious reincarnation spring rolls. Talk about how he conquers every diner in the Izakaya with his cooking. Let's talk about how he solved the problem of souffle retraction raised by Akina Kubo Momo. Anyway, every word expressed praise for Zhang Fan. She wished that in front of her grandfather, she could praise Zhang Fan as a monster in the sky and on the earth. Oh, no, he was a super genius who was seen once in a century. As for Irina's emotional narration from beginning to end, the commander-in-chief felt very puzzled. But he wisely chose to remain silent and let Irina continue talking. Occasionally he would even be stunned for a long time because of Irina's narration, although it may be an exaggeration. But listen to the mysterious Izakaya owner. You can actually make beef hamburgers, anchovy chips and brownies with some scraps such as toast bread, tofu residue and rice bran, which makes Irina's God's tongue feel delicious. Finally, this well-informed and knowledgeable general manager inevitably feels a little complicated. It wasn't until he was careful and discovered that Irina seemed to be able to hide her original disdain for civilian cuisine as long as she talked with Zhang Fan that he noticed a clue. Grandfather, are you listening? The owner Zhang of the Izakaya is really a chef with impeccable moral character and ability. I hope you can personally come forward and hire him to be our professor at Tatsuki Academy. I believe and can guarantee you that as long as Tatsuki Academy has his presence, its overall strength will definitely rise to several levels. At this time, the commander-in-chief looked at him with dull eyes, as if he was thinking about something. Irina, who was talking endlessly, quickly cut to the chase and truthfully stated her purpose in praising Zhang Fan. Let's talk. You just want him to come to Tatsuki Academy. After a moment of confusion, the commander-in-chief realized what his granddaughter meant. However, if what Irina said is true, shopkeeper Zhang can really conquer the God's tongue using some scraps of ingredients, which shows that this person's true strength must be unfathomable. You must know that unlike a 5-star hotel, what he is running now is an Izakaya. Therefore, he cannot use expensive dishes as his signature dishes, otherwise he will lose those social diners who live a 2-point and 1-line life every day. In other words, most of the diners we are facing are ordinary people, so naturally we can only cook some ordinary people's dishes. Interesting, a chef who can rely on common people to cook it will be powerful enough to conquer God's tongue? Then, wouldn't it be nice for him to make noble dishes that even ordinary people can't look up to? Completely realizing the seriousness of the matter, the commander-in-chief stroked his beard and said meaningfully, Grandfather, didn't I tell you, he used real sea bream to make reincarnation spring rolls? I think the dish can be classified as noble cuisine. After all, there is a very mysterious thing about this dish, that is, it will suddenly glow when it is served. Irina explained again. Glow? Is it possible that fluorescent powder was added? No, at first I thought something was added, but it turned out that the food itself shines. What? The commander-in-chief was completely stunned. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42: Ji Xinglao and the Celebration Banquet. The next day, 7 p.m. sharp, Zhang Fan lit up the red lantern sign outside the advertising words of Izakaya look warm and dazzling, Like a quiet harbor under the night, when you open the wooden door, a complex mixed aroma will hit your nostrils instantly. It is the smell of sake, kebabs, fresh seafood, and other dishes that go with drinks, and this kind of fragrance seems to put people in a small world far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The diners at the Izakaya are all kinds of people. They come from different age groups, different professions, and different interests and hobbies. Among them are young people, old people, office workers, business bosses, teachers and scholars, artists, and musicians chasing their dreams, although they have different identities and backgrounds, in the specific place of the Izakaya. They can all put aside their worldly troubles and share each other's stories and emotions with each other. After all, most people are humble. They are like a drop of water in the ocean, unable to fight against the world, but at night, they can have some comfort for themselves. Food, drinks, it will always be the soul of the Izakaya and the medium for people to communicate with each other. Come on, we have tea instead of wine. Congratulations to Senior Isaku from our dormitory for being promoted to the 7th seed of the current top 10. At this time, Yoshino Yuki, who is in the Izakaya, held up a teacup and shouted happily to everyone immediately. After clinking glasses with everyone, she hurriedly took a sip of fragrant tea. When you first enter your mouth, you can only feel the fragrance of the tea is very refreshing, but at the same time, it feels very mellow and sweet. It feels natural and harmonious, and the aftertaste is refreshing. Well, I really didn't expect that. The floral tea provided by this Izakaya is so sweet. Really, I want to brew such a good scented tea. Not only does it require good quality tea, but you also have to put a lot of effort into the water temperature, brewing time, etc. On the side, Ryako Sakuki, who also took a sip, thought for a moment and then said calmly, "So, I just can't figure it out. An event like a celebration banquet can be held in any hotel. Why do you have to borrow my room?" Zenji Marui, who was wearing glasses, started to look aggrieved as soon as he put down his teacup. Ji Liao, this is the only boarding facility in the entire Tatsuki Academy. Therefore, there are some boarding students in this dormitory, but the number of boarding students is so small that they can all be counted before all 10 fingers are stretched out. The reason why there are so few is that the dormitory is currently managed by a man named Amidao Fumio. Students who want to move into the Jixing dormitory must undergo the dormitory's unique dormitory skills test. Even for a student like Tadakoro, it took 3 months to barely pass the dormitory entrance test. Maybe, at this time, Tiansu, whose strength was not very good, but to a certain extent, it still shows that it is not that easy to become a boarding student in the Jixinglio dormitory. And among all the dormitory rooms, room 205 of Zenji Marui has the largest area. At the same time, coupled with his extremely careful personality, he often cleans his room. Therefore, the group of boarders in the Jixing dormitory would requisition his room every time they wanted to have a party. Well, it's so nerve-wracking. Senior Mikuchichi's Chungoodai restaurant closes after 6 o'clock. Speaking of this, Yi said, who looked at everyone with an embarrassed look during last year's residential training. As a former Tatsuki graduate, Kikuchi Sanako was invited by Tatsuki officials to serve as an assessor. Yisaku, who has excellent performance, naturally has some intersection with her. Certainly it's been a year, things have changed, and even he has now become the 7th among the top 10. In order to celebrate his promotion to the top 10, the boarding students in the Jixing dormitory proposed to hold a celebration banquet. At first, they wanted to celebrate in Marui Zenji's room 205, but they encountered strong opposition from him. Helplessly, as the protagonist Isaku remembered this Chungoodai restaurant, result it really backfired when they came at 7 o'clock. The restaurant was already closed. Fortunately, there was an Izakaya operating at night next door, so they had no choice but to come here and make do with a celebration party. Must not know this is exactly the choice. The gears of fate started turning from now on. Zayahu, come on, let's clink glasses too. Congratulations on your successful promotion to the upper division with last place. Just when the atmosphere seemed to be very lively, the slightly naughty Yuki Yoshino seemed to have some thoughts when she saw that Tadakoro was always silent, so she took the initiative to chat. Yoshino, are you praising me or hurting me with your words? Seeing Yoshino Yuki approaching her, Tazo reacted slightly and couldn't help but smile awkwardly. As everyone knows, Tatsuki Academy itself is a seiryo cooking school where promotion and graduation are extremely difficult, but unlike the higher education departments that focus on practice, the various assessments in the junior high school are actually some simple theoretical knowledge. such as cooking theory, nutrition, public health, introduction to cultivation, business studies, management, etc. Therefore, students only need to master these basic theories, and then it will be easy to pass the entrance examination beyond SUOA. Even though she always looks very cowardly, she still has some skills otherwise. She wouldn't even be able to pass Amidao Fumio's test in the dormitory trial. However, do not know why as soon as I arrived at the examination room and got the test paper, her head was like mush, and she felt confused. In the end, she had no choice but to finish in last place and barely managed to enter high school. Tempura. The name of this dish may seem a bit fancy, but it is just a dish fried in batter. The owner, Fan, first prepares some fresh seasonal vegetables, such as dried persimmons, dried bananas, etc., and then also prepares seafood products such as conger eels, cuttlefish, and oysters. Then use flour, eggs and water to make a batter among them. Choose low-gluten flour with a gluten content of less than 10%. Finally, the proportions between them are 15% eggs, 35% flour, and 50% water. After making the batter, quickly smear all the vegetables and seafood products with the batter. And then put it in the pan, because the consistency of the batter is not very high. If the oil temperature is too low, the batter will fall off. If the oil temperature is too high, the ingredients inside will burn. Therefore, the most challenging aspect of tempura is the skill of controlling the heat. Last of the last, do not throw away any ingredients that are stained with batter. Coat it with egg liquid, dip it in breadcrumbs, fry it in a pan until golden and crispy, control the oil and take it out. The elderly and children love to eat it, and the kids next door are crying with envy. How many? Your tempura is ready. The remaining dishes will have to wait for a while. Afterwards, Zhang Fan placed a plate of tempura with various ingredients in front of the boarders. Chapter 43. Hidden in the city. In the stereotype when it comes to fried food, it is directly associated with junk food, whether it is the American-style burgers that are popular around the world, or roadside food stalls, or street fried skewers. In the eyes of many people, they are high-fat and high-calorie foods, but in the palace of gourmet cuisine, Neon Country's tempura is an exception. Although it is still regarded as fried junk food by some people, those who are truly knowledgeable know that tempura may seem simple, but it cannot be fried casually. From the freshness of the ingredients to the selection of cooking utensils, the preparation of seasonings and the control of temperature, everything is meticulous and precise. Therefore, good tempura, it tastes crispy and not at all greasy like fried food. It's not street food, it's comparable to the fried food from McDonald's and KFC. Ga, boom. Eaten the tempura in one bite, Yoshinoyuki's mouth actually made a rattling sound. Well, it's so crispy, just imported. The crispy dough will make a pleasant sound between your lips and tongue. The overall taste is crispy on the outside and fresh on the inside, fragrant but not greasy, with a hint of sweetness in the oysters. When you taste it carefully, you can feel that it is always full of the most natural flavor of the ingredients in your mouth. After saying that, Yoshino, who was still unfinished, picked up a small piece of tempura again with chopsticks and continued to chew slowly. This level, it definitely exceeded my expectations. Ishiki Wei, who was also eating tempura, fell into surprise. You must know that good quality tempura is actually not wrapped in heavy dough, but a thin layer of dough. The reason is that the dough will form quickly in hot oil and wrap the ingredients in the dough. The water in the ingredients will evaporate and be wrapped in the dough, and the food will be steamed in the dough. That is to say, no matter what kind of ingredients are used, both it and the batter must achieve the perfect balance of oil and water, sweetness and freshness, texture and taste. Obviously, shopkeeper Zhang did a very good job in his approach. The tempura he makes is really thin and not sloppy at all. The cooking method that pursues the original taste of ingredients, the style that creates another kind of delicious food through simplicity, is really reflected in this small piece of tempura. Even if he was asked to try making tempura in person, Isaac would never be able to reach this level. Strangeness, isn't this an ordinary Izakaya? Why is this shop owner's cooking skills so good that even I can't figure it out? Looking at Zhang Fan blankly, Yisaku couldn't help but fell into a brief daze, and his eyes gradually became complicated. Sometimes, a dish can truly reflect a chef's abilities. Judging from this tempura, the owner Zhang has brought out the original flavors of various ingredients to the extreme, even using scientific craftsmanship and excellent temperature control technology. The tempura truly has the outstanding characteristics of crispy on the outside, tender on the inside, and juicy and fresh taste. Not an exaggeration. Tempura in an izakaya, it was definitely the most delicious of all the tempura that Isiway had eaten in his life. Therefore, In his eyes, with just this tempura, shopkeeper Zhang can far surpass all the top 10 in Totsuki Academy, but it is precisely this kind of person who is actually the owner of a small izakaya. Could it be said that today's powerful people like to hide in the city? First choose a fresh wild salmon. After washing the salmon, wipe it dry with kitchen towels, then apply an appropriate amount of salt evenly on the fish and let it sit for 15 minutes to allow the salt to fully penetrate into the fish. Then put the fish on the grill and grill over medium heat for 8 minutes. During this period, you need to keep turning the fish to avoid burning. Finally, take out the grilled salmon, place it on a plate, wait for a while, wait for it to cool down, and then serve it in front of Izakaya and others. Shopkeeper, can I take you a little longer? I want to ask you a question about this tempura. How do you start with a smoke point of oil to achieve perfect control over the heat when baking tempura? Unexpectedly, just when Zhang Fan put down his plate and wanted to turn back to the cooking table, he was stopped by Yisui and asked a very professional question. The so-called smoke point of oil, it refers to the temperature point at which smoke begins to be produced during the heating process of grease. When the temperature of oil exceeds the smoke point, the oil will begin oxidation, decomposition, polymerization and other reactions. Therefore, if they are experienced chefs, they usually use the smoke point of oil to process various ingredients. Tempura, I want a crispy fried texture, but it still has to keep the ingredients inside fresh and tender. Generally, the temperature needs to be controlled at 150 to 180 degrees Celsius, so the smoke point of the used grease should be above this temperature to be effective, but it should not be too high. After all, only this temperature and time can ensure that the batter is fried evenly, crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, while also avoiding the smoke point problem of fat. If an oil with a high smoke point is used, if an experienced chef can control it properly, there will be no problem. But for many inexperienced chefs, they may not even notice when the temperature has reached the upper limit of the smoke point arrive. In the end, the result is that the tempura will explode into KFC. At this time, everyone present looked at Zhang Fan with shocked faces, only Yisui who looked calm. None of them thought that when frying tempura, you can also use the smoke point of oil. Of course, this wonderful method definitely requires the chef himself to master the smoke point index of various oils. Then, what is the smoke point index of various oils? If it is fried tempura, which oil is best to use? Then, just when the atmosphere seemed calmer, the curious Yisui, who finally couldn't help but muster up the courage, and asked softly, the temperature of rapeseed oil is 104 to 116 degrees Celsius, corn oil is 160 degrees Celsius, walnut oil is 160 degrees Celsius, the smoke point of white sesame oil is generally around 210 degrees Celsius, olive oil is 188 degrees Celsius, and soybean oil is 110 to 116 degrees Celsius. As for what kind of oil should be used when frying tempura, there are actually many choices: sesame oil, corn oil, safflower seed oil. All of these oils can be used to fry tempura. Camellia oil, corn oil, and soybean oil can also be used. Different pressing methods and refining levels will naturally bring different characteristics of tempura. Chapter 44: The Gap Between People. It is different from the lightness of sushi and soba noodles. Tempura belongs to the fry type. Although it goes against the light food tradition of Japanese cuisine, it is still very popular. The reason behind this is that the ingredients and coating of tempura contain water. Based on the principle that water and oil are incompatible, the heat generated by heating the oil is used to dehydrate the internal ingredients, forcing out a fresh and sweet natural taste of the food. Thus at first glance it looks fried. In fact, tempura is a steamed food. The steamed tempura can be placed on paper without oil or water, so it is loved by many people. In short, oil, it is the soul of tempura. When it comes to frying tempura, 70% depends on the oil temperature, 20% depends on the batter, and 10% is about fresh ingredients. Zhang Fan's strict attention to details is fully reflected in the oil used in tempura. In his opinion, the oil suitable for deep-fried tempura must have aroma, but not be too rich and overwhelm the original flavor of the ingredients. At the same time, the energy must be sufficient and the smoke point must be at the most suitable index. This ensures that the ingredients can be colored quickly and bring out the flavor of the ingredients in a very short period of time. Finally, after constant attempts, he discovered that the oil that is perfect for frying tempura is rice oil. This kind of oil is light in quality and will not take away the freshness of the ingredients. It colors quickly, has enough energy, and has a delicate fragrance during frying. It is more practical than sesame oil. fireworks. This is the essence of an izakaya. Handsome, refined, personable. This is the charm of shopkeeper Zhang. In him, the sense of mystery that he hides in the city, and the ability to stop making noises and start surprising people once he makes a noise always impress every diner. Shopkeeper, your knowledge is so broad. If I had as much knowledge as you, I wouldn't always get A-level evaluations. After listening to Zhang Fan's explanation, Tiansu, whose big watery eyes were like two shining pearls, radiating light, in her heart, she began to admire Zhang Fan. Perhaps among all the residents of Polestar Residence Hall she is best at local dishes like tempura, so it resonates with her more psychologically, right, but at the same time, she was also deeply ashamed. After all, in the field of cooking she was best at, she was not even as good as an izakaya owner. These areas of knowledge, it's all slowly figured out through constant practice. Nowadays, the competitiveness of the catering industry is becoming increasingly fierce, and there are endless varieties of dishes, condiments, marketing methods, service levels, etc. So, how do you keep the purest way of making a dish, but also cater to the trend of the times and make breakthroughs? I think this is a question that every chef should think deeply about. Hearing this, Zhang Fan just shrugged and said nonchalantly. Then he stopped talking to Tadakoro and others, turned back to the cooking table, and continued to work. In fact, realistically, many cooks, the dishes they make will actually lose their original surprise and shock as time goes by, and gradually become bland and tasteless. This phenomenon does not mean that chefs are lazy or cut corners on ingredients. It is the cumulative result of the intensity of human sensory stimulation, and has certain characteristics of intensity. To be honest, it's the difference between full and tired. If fullness is a physical effect of stomach capacity, then the perception of satisfaction is a psychological response. That is to say, the same food, no matter how delicious it is initially. But if you eat it for a long time continuously or eat a lot, it will eventually lead to sensory saturation and eventually a disgusting mentality. The curse of God's tongue is actually an enhanced and upgraded version of this aspect. However, Zhang Fan's cooking, but it always has a kind of magic power, which seems to make people feel more delicious the more they eat. Therefore, for Yisahu and others, they all more or less saw the hidden secrets, and they all knew that every dish Zhang Fan made was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Imusaki. Shun, what do you think, Isako? Wei turned to Jun Imusaki, who was sitting next to him, and asked, very strong, and it's the kind of monster that's so strong that even I feel scared. Jun Imusaki replied calmly. Even though he is usually taciturn and doesn't want to say anything in front of the public, he is very thoughtful in his heart. From the moment he walked into the izakaya, he knew that this place was not simple after all. He dared to run an izakaya next door to Tatsuki's graduates. If the owner didn't have a pair of brushes, he would not believe it. However, a cup of scented tea came first. He immediately made Jun Imusaki feel extremely uneasy. Afterwards, the crispy and tender tempura made him feel that the gap between people in this world could be even greater than the gap between humans and dogs. He can make the humble tempura so delicate yet delicious. I would like to ask all the Japanese chefs in Neon Country, how many of them can reach such a state and reach such a level? It is conceivable that this shopkeeper Zhang is really a master of pretending to be a pig and eating the tiger. Senior, how long do you think it will take to surpass him? Then, Jun Imusaki asked Ishiki K. It's you, still? Me, eyes. Wei was stunned for a moment. Do you think I can cook like this in my life? How to say, although my family is a famous one in the Japanese cuisine world, my favorite dish is not tempura. On the contrary, I dare to conclude that the dish that shopkeeper Zhang is best at is definitely not the tempura Japanese dish in front of us. So, if it wasn't a head-on collision, it would actually be difficult to see through his overall strength. But go with my gut. If he gets serious, I'm afraid don't say it's me. Even Si Yingshi, the current #1 among the 10 elites, will fall into his hands. As for when I can surpass him, you might as well ask me when I can replace Si Yingshi, and then we can talk about this topic. Looking at Zhang Fan, who was still busy, Isaac quickly looked away and spoke truthfully to Jun Imusaki. So, his identity is definitely not as simple as the owner of an izakaya. Jun Imusaki's expression was both surprised and confused. Hard to say, maybe he really is an izakaya owner. Yisaku smiled mysteriously. Yuwu, it seems that we have chosen the right address to hold the celebration banquet this time. Chapter 45. Unexpected guest. Moon, like running water, although not as dazzling as the sun, It is so soft and peaceful. The pale yellow lamp casts a faint light, creating a romantic atmosphere inside the izakaya. The soft saxophone music sounded slowly, spreading like an invisible smoke, gradually occupying the hearts of the diners. Now at the celebration banquet, delicious food, that's all. Even every dish is prepared and cooked by owner Zhang himself. Tadakoro Megumi, Yoshino Yuki, Sakaki Ryoko, Marui Zenji, Ishiki K, etc. were all tasting delicious food, drinking scented tea, chatting and laughing during the entire celebration banquet. Zhang Fan was like an unrelated bystander, watching this group of interesting people and listening to their respective stories and backgrounds. Soon 3 hours passed. There are still less than 2 hours until the izakaya closes. This celebration banquet hosted by the boarding students of Jizing Liao Dormitory has finally come to an end. Everyone, did you all have fun? After collecting the bill, Zhang Fan asked them with a faint smile on his face, "Shopkeeper, you're great here. We were originally worried about how a small place like this could enliven the atmosphere of a banquet." On the side, Yoshino Yuki replied without thinking, "The gatherings of students are actually very simple and not very demanding, but often when I go to an izakaya to order a set meal for a banquet, it often costs tens of thousands of yen per person, and the portions of the dishes are ridiculously small. Each person only eats one bite of each dish, a piece of fried chicken, a piece of sashimi, and a chopstick of noodles. The rest of the time is spent drinking." Although the banquet usually lasts for more than 2 hours, with this kind of portion and this way of eating, it is really unsatisfactory. However, it surprised me that in Zhang Fan's izakaya, every dish is generous in portion. It was also very delicious, making Yoshino Yuki and others enjoy it. The most important thing is that the price of each dish is very affordable. This made them all feel that it was a great deal, and their favorability for this izakaya began to increase. Food is the source of happiness. Unlike drinking to relieve worries, delicious food can actually bring happiness and satisfaction to people, and the quality of the food determines the vitality of an izakaya to a large extent. True, Zhang Fan's izakaya, because it has been open for a relatively short time, its popularity is not very high, but the exquisiteness of each dish, his superb cooking skills, and the low prices of the dishes can make every diner who comes here quickly find a sense of belonging. Shopkeeper, this is an izakaya that serves drinks and food, but why didn't I see the menu? Finally, Yoshino Yuki, who had eaten and drank enough, started to act like a chatterbox and continued chatting with Zhang Fan. The ingredients supplied are different every day, so our store does not have a fixed recipe. Zhang Fan continued to explain, "As long as there are ready-made ingredients or you want to eat dishes that I can make, you can order them at will." I see. What a good rule. That's an ordinary izakaya. Many recipes cover various Japanese delicacies, such as sushi, tempura, soba noodles, etc. In addition, there are a variety of Japanese sake, green tea and specialty drinks for diners to choose from, but your izakaya doesn't feel like a restaurant that specializes in Japanese cuisine. How can't it be stipulated that izakayas sell other dishes? Zhang Fan asked with a smile. Now, that's how it feels to me. Shop owner, you are so casual in doing things, and you don't want to be bound by the world and rules at all. When Yoshino Yuki heard this, her face turned slightly red and she responded awkwardly, "In fact, a new era izakaya, it is very different from traditional izakaya in order to meet the different needs of diners. Some emerging chain izakayas often not only provide a variety of Japanese and Western meals, but can also be ordered using iPads, and even the menus are available in multiple languages, although there are many forms, and everyone operates according to their own abilities. But one thing remains the same, for people, an izakaya is a place where they can be themselves freely." The izakaya run by Zhang Fan is very different from other izakayas in form, but it uses casual and free ordering rules to satisfy the appetites and souls of diners. "Okay, Yoshino, it's getting late, we have to go back." At this moment, Tadakoro inside the izakaya pulled the corner of Yoshino Yuki's clothes and said softly, "Why, I see, shopkeeper, let's do it." Originally, Yoshino Yuki wanted to continue talking to Zhang Fan for a few more words. He could only get up quickly and come to Tian Suhu's side, and then wave to him to say goodbye. You guys walk slowly." Seeing this, Zhang Fan just nodded. Finally, the group of residents of Jixing Dormitory left the izakaya in a happy mood. Night. Deeper Ever since Tadakoro and the others left, the entire Izakaya was a little less lively and a little more peaceful. Although occasionally there will still be some diners walking in to eat and drink, the overall atmosphere is still quieter. And in the past, at this point in time, Kobayashi Ringtong, who was second in the top 10, was in the Izakaya. As a result, she has not been seen until tonight. This must be the first time that Kobayashi Ringtong has not been to the Izakaya in more than a month since it opened. Right, for some reason, Zhang Fan still missed it in his heart. Afterwards, 2 more regular customers appeared in the Izakaya, plus 1 stranger, but it was obvious that 2 black cars were parked at the door of the Izakaya, and 2 girls got out of the front car. The car behind was a white-haired old man. Grandfather, this is it. Arena, who had just gotten out of the car, quickly came to the commander-in-chief's side and said softly, "The restaurant next door is Chunggo Pavilion, I remember." The commander-in-chief was stunned for a moment and began to think of something in his mind. Finally, he seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly said, "Is this Chunggo Oda-e restaurant run by the 1989 graduate Xuan Guo?" "Yes, it belongs to Senior Mujiazi." "Well, it seems like someone who can run an Izakaya next door to Kikuchi is not an ordinary person." After saying that, the commander-in-chief opened the door and walked into the Izakaya with anticipation behind them. Arena and Hisako first looked at each other, then quickly walked in anxiously. Chapter 46. You are obviously craving for my food. Commander-in-chief, because he is the supreme leader of Tatsuki Academy at the same time, he has a great influence on the entire Neon country cuisine, so he is known as the devil of food. Although this commander-in-chief rarely appears in front of UIU students, however, the survival of the fittest education method he pursued had a vital impact on the teaching and operation of Tatsuki Academy. Certainly for the unexpected guest, the commander-in-chief, the owner of the Izakaya, Zhang Fan, was not too surprised. Just came, and the decoration of the entire Izakaya feels very classic and traditional. As for the diners, it's probably about to close. There aren't many, and most of them look like ordinary people. As for the shop owner, he is a young man about 20 years old. He looks very handsome, but in that personable temperament, he always exudes a calmness that is different from his age. So just by looking at him, Zhang Fan left a deep impression on the commander-in-chief. Subsequently, commander-in-chief, just find a seat and sit down. Arena, why are you free to come to the Izakaya tonight? However, at this moment, Zhang Fan bypassed the commander-in-chief and came to Arena to greet her. I can't. I come to the Izakaya every day. When Arena heard this, she was startled at first, and then gave Zhang Fan an annoyed look. What's more, my grandfather is coming to your Izakaya this time. You should feel lucky. If it weren't for me, do you think that a small place like an Izakaya would be worthy of Commander-in-Chief Tatsuki's visit? If you want to eat my cooking, just ask. You have to find some lame excuse every time to fool me. Who fooled you? This time it is really Commander-in-Chief Tatsuki who is coming to the Izakaya. Hisako and I are just accompanying him. Hearing this, Arena quibbled again. What? To eat the reincarnation spring rolls should be bigger, otherwise they won't be enough. Look, answered so quickly. And you also told me to increase the portion size. You are obviously craving for my body, my food. You knowing that she had been teased by Zhang Fan, Arena's face turned red with a bang. All right, I won't tease you anymore. Tell me, what kind of food do you want to eat this time when your grandfather, and Hisako come to the Izakaya? Seeing Arena's rare expression of shame and anger, Zhang Fan felt a little satisfied, but everything should have a limit, and he also knew that enough was enough, so after pretending to cough twice, he asked formally, Zhang Fan, I just told you, I want reincarnation spring rolls, and the portions should be bigger. Unfortunately, no more snapper, so I can't make reincarnation spring rolls tonight. What? No reincarnated spring rolls? Arena was startled for a moment. I dare you to tease me for a long time, but you just can't cook this dish? You know, she had praised Zhang Fan so much in front of the commander-in-chief before. As a result, at this juncture, at this opportunity to prove that he was not lying, Zhang Fan was unable to cook his best dish. Zhang Fan, you did it on purpose, right? Nakari. Arena's face gradually turned red. She actually used her white teeth to bite her lips tightly, and finally her tense expression softened, but You can tell now she feels quite unhappy with Zhang Fan. I really won't lie to you this time. Zhang Fan, however, still stood where he was and replied calmly. In fact, he still has real snappers in his hands now. After all, the system rewarded him with 10 high-quality real snappers during the last Sun-in, and he can't use them all. But this time he didn't want to entertain Arena and others with reincarnation spring rolls. There are 2 reasons for this. The first is reincarnation spring rolls, the process and method of which are particularly troublesome. Second, he just got a new special recipe of shorayu dumplings, so he wanted to use Arena's God's Tongue ability to test the power of this shorayu dumplings, the reincarnation spring roll you want. Now, we can't do it because of the lack of sebrim, but I have developed a new dish, and I can assure you that the new dish is definitely comparable to the reincarnation spring roll. Why, you've developed a new dish. Upon hearing this, Arena, who was originally in a very depressed mood, became shocked. In 3 days, she came to the Izakaya 3 times, and every time she met Zhang Fan, he would say this: I have developed a new dish. No, current cuisine is it that easy to develop. Even if you are a real chef, sometimes it may take you a year, several years, or even a lifetime to develop a new dish. Then through unremitting efforts and continuous improvement, the new cuisine was gradually perfected, and an alternative genius like Arena can use the power of God's tongue to develop new dishes in a very short time. However, this world, how many people have the power of God's tongue? Zhang Fan. Then, what is the new dish? Arena was shocked, and inevitably filled with hope and curiosity. It has a nice name, but you won't understand it even if you tell it to me. So I'll just explain it to you. It's essentially a dumpling made of shrimp. Meat, dumpling. What kind of shrimp are you using? Australian lobster? New Zealand rock lobster? French blue lobster? Or rose lobster? Arena quickly listed out all the varieties of lobsters that she thought were reasonably priced. Prawn. You can buy it in supermarkets outside, and the price is very cheap. Zhang Fan said it truthfully. Nakari Arena? Sometimes Arena, I really don't want to chat with Zhang Fan because while chatting, he might really get mad at him. Obviously the type of sebrim used in the spring rolls reincarnated last time was the expensive and high-quality real sebrim, but this time, the new dish is just ordinary shrimp dumplings, but it actually uses a variety of prawns that are common in coastal areas of China. Arena, let me tell you this, although it is made with ordinary shrimp meat, the key point is not the quality of the shrimp meat, but the dumpling wrapper, and it's guaranteed to bring an unprecedented taste experience, as well as the strongest visual effect. I think you will like it when the time comes. Zhang Fan smiled lightly, and then explained in front of Arena. Real? Arena, a little skeptical. I'm not lying to you. Zhang Fan nodded and responded, okay, let's have 3, more shrimp dumplings. Arena replied, okay. Just a moment. After taking the bill, Zhang Fan turned back to the cooking table. Chapter 47. Against the odds, the dumplings actually flew. Shake the bottle. After taking a few sips, the commander-in-chief showed an expression of satisfaction. Immediately, with a corner of his eye, he secretly glanced at Zhang Fan in front of the cooking table, his thoughts inevitably wandering. As the daughter of the Nakari family, Arena will definitely always be the apple of his eye in the eyes of his commander-in-chief. In Totsuki Academy, Arena naturally has a very high status, background and wealth. This gave her a very high reputation in Yuanyu, but it also made it difficult for her to establish a close relationship with ordinary students. After all, most students there are only feelings of jealousy, envy, and awe towards her, and the few people who can get close to her will be repelled by her arrogance. So, Arena is actually really lonely. But in the Izakaya, the shopkeeper Zhang had the intention of teasing her at first, but he is born with a kind temperament, and he can often quickly close the distance with Arena with just a few words. And he can have a fun chat with her. From the commander's perspective, this feels quite incredible. Could it be, in this world, is the person who can save Arena the owner of this Izakaya? Looking at the clear and transparent sake in the cup, the white-haired commander-in-chief could only say to himself, first prepare regular all-purpose flour, pour it into a container, add cold water and edible salt, slowly add it to the flour in batches, stir with chopsticks while adding water, and finally knead it into a softer dough with your hands. After that, cover it with a damp cloth, wake it up for 10 minutes, rub it with your hands, and wake it up for another 20 minutes. At the same time, Prepare the starch powder. Use hot water above 90 degrees Celsius and pour it on the powder slowly, little by little. After the dough forms, let it rest for 10 minutes. Miss, why did he prepare 2 different kinds of flour and flour? Seeing that Zhang Fan was mixing 2 different types of dough, Nido Hisako, who was watching quietly next to him, was very confused. In my experience, using 2 kinds of dough, you should be trying to get different taste and appearance, right? Irina's eyes flickered at first, and then she expressed her opinion. Medium gluten flour has a moisture content of 13.8% and a crude protein of more than 8.55, which is between high gluten flour and low gluten flour in terms of its ductility. All-purpose flour is actually worse than high gluten flour, but on the other hand, all-purpose flour is white and shiny in color, and the food produced is soft and a little chewy, so it is also very suitable for making dumpling wrappers. As for the flour and dough, it is more delicate, which can increase the visual appeal. Strangeness: if you just want to get a cosmetic effect, you can use high gluten flour and cornstarch in a ratio of 4:1 to prepare medium gluten flour. So why do you need flour and all-purpose flour? What's more, Zhang Fan is a kind of starch. The skin is relatively thin and can break if you are not careful. The texture is also more delicate. In fact, it cannot be used as dumpling wrappers at all. Thinking of this, Irina's eyes were filled with suspicion every time Zhang Fan made a new dish. She was always completely confused and couldn't understand it, and in the end, when all the secrets of his cooking were revealed, he was able to completely subvert her understanding of this kind of cuisine. Therefore, Nakari Irina began to have a premonition in her heart. The shrimp dumplings Zhang Fan made this time would still shock her like the previous 2 times. It stands to reason, the thinner the dumpling skin should be, the better, and he actually wants to use all-purpose flour and Zhang Fan flour to make 2 different kinds of dumpling wrappers. Commander-in-Chief, seeing Zhang Fan doing this, he felt really inexplicable. Not as delicious as dumplings. It's better to sit upside down than to feel comfortable. As an important part of Chinese culture, dumplings have a long history. As early as the late Eastern Han Dynasty, Dr. Zhang Zongjing returned to his hometown during the winter solstice. On the way, he saw many poor people suffering from frostbite on their ears, and some even contracted wind and cold, so he used mutton, pepper and herbs to dispel cold and heat to make stuffing, then wrapped it into the shape of an ear and served it to the poor. In the end, he successfully resisted the wind and cold and cured the ear. Later, after years of development during the Ming and Qing dynasties, dumplings began to spread throughout the country. Dumplings are not only delicious, but also unique and simple to make. They can be made with hot noodles, pastry noodles, egg noodles or rice noodles. The fillings are also varied and can be meat or vegetarian, sweet or salty, and the cooking method can also be steamed, boiled, fried, pan-fried, baked, etc. All in all, dumplings are already the same as tofu and can be varied and have different tastes at this time. But you can see that Zhang Fan washed all the shrimps, then used scissors to cut off the long beard and the sharp corners on the head, then use a toothpick to pick out the tissue connecting the head and body. While rinsing, continue to use the toothpick to mash the tissue in the sandbag, and finally rinse it clean. Insert a toothpick into the section near the tail, pierce the skin and cut the shrimp meat into pieces, then mix with cooking wine, ginger, white pepper, sugar, salt, sesame oil and shrimp brains. Stir well and marinate for 15 minutes. Finally, the shrimp shells are peeled off and carved into the shape of a dragon head. Immediately afterwards, use different materials for dumpling wrappers, that is, use crystal skin as the base. Then cover it with ordinary dumpling skin, seal the edges, then turn the dumplings upside down and steam them. Is it my imagination? Are they really just using 2 kinds of dumpling wrappers? Seeing this, Irina couldn't help but be stunned. Her mind was racing. She completely failed to understand what purpose Zhang Fan had for doing this. It was so against common sense. Finally, as the shrimp dumplings were steamed, Zhang Fan, who had sharp eyes and quick hands, quickly opened the steamer. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Unexpectedly, the moment the steam oven was opened, the entire steam oven was instantly filled with water mist, and then a dazzling light burst out, blinding the titanium alloy eyes of all the diners present. Huh, why is it glowing again? Irina, with an incredible look on her face, this was the second time she had seen glowing food, but when she saw it again, she was still frightened, and just when all the diners, including Nakari Irina, Nakari Senziman, Nido Hisako, etc., had not come back to their senses due to the glowing phenomenon. Shrimp? No, it's a dragon. The dragon-shaped dumplings were rising slowly in the steam oven filled with water mist, like a blue dragon soaring in the clouds and mist, with many twists and turns. Its whole body is gorgeous, and it looks down upon everyone with a strong and majestic aura. The dumplings actually flew. In an instant, Nakiri Arena was stunned. On the side, Nito Hisako, Nakiri Shinzeman and others were also completely dumbfounded. Chapter 48. The Commander-in-Chief is wearing clothes? Until the mist dissipates, the entire shrimp dumpling itself is completely exposed to everyone. Seeing the densely packed dragon scales on the dragon body and seeing these shrimp dumplings with dragon whiskers floating in the air, it took Arena a while to come back to her senses. Do not know why. Saw such a stunning scene. Arena, the excitement is beyond words. What is the noble cuisine that she has been pursuing all her life? And for what kind of cuisine, then? This dragon-shaped shrimp dumpling that can reach heaven is the best answer. Yes, if such a dish it was created by oneself, how wonderful it must be. How did you do it? Finally, the shocked Arena couldn't help but curiously ask Zhang Fan. Eat first and see. With your ability, you should be able to get a glimpse of it soon. Zhang Fan replied mysteriously, knowing that he didn't want to reveal too much information. Arena naturally didn't waste any words. She quickly picked up the majestic dragon-shaped dumpling with her chopsticks. Then we watched it first. Although this strange dragon-shaped dumpling originally used two different dumpling wrappers, but the outer skin is as thin as a piece of paper and is translucent. You can even see the bright red shrimp meat inside through the outer skin. Whole shrimp dumplings. The shape is definitely exquisite and clear, and every detail is done with great care, which makes people's appetites increase after just looking at it. But after all, it is still impossible to see with the naked eye why this dumpling can go to heaven after opening the steamer. In desperation, Arena has no thoughts. I can only slowly put the dumplings into my mouth and start to taste them carefully. Just entered. I just feel that this dumpling wrapper does have a completely different texture from ordinary dumplings. The first thing you bite into with your teeth is a layer of relatively soft pink dumpling wrapper. This dumpling wrapper is light, thin and silky in texture. Then, before Arena could react, the light and thin texture suddenly became hard. The reason why it becomes hard is because you bite into the second layer of all-purpose flour dumpling skin. Although this change in taste from light to hard will make people feel caught off guard, but paired with a delicious shrimp meat inside, it can still completely satisfy Arena's God's tongue. Just adding shrimp brains to the shrimp filling, as well as seasonings such as cooking wine, ginger powder, white pepper, sugar, salt, sesame oil, etc., can fully bring out the flavor of seafood. An ultimate taste experience, and eating till the end. The chewy shrimp meat stirs wildly in your mouth. Oh, Fisha, Grandpa, hurry up and taste it. The taste of these shrimp dumplings is simply great. Although they are ordinary prawns, they are rich in condiments. No wonder they are so fragrant. It may be a little less refined in taste, but it's more rough and gives people a strong taste experience. Oh, I see. First, we need to remove all the brains inside the shrimp's head. Then, the shrimp brains are added to the meat filling and wrapped in two different layers of dumpling skin. Right after applying heat, as the dumplings take off, the meat fillings and shrimp brains inside the two layers of dumpling wrappers move with them, creating a perfect collision of each other. This way, the delicious flavor of the shrimp is like being inside a tightly closed pressure cooker. You only need to bite the dumpling wrapper with your teeth, and the flavor hidden in it will explode in your mouth like a powder keg being ignited. That kind of meat-filling soup that bursts out instantly is even more. I can't help it. Open your mouth slightly, blow a warm breath into the air. At this moment, Arena Nakiri, who closed her bright eyes tightly, kept using the tongue of God to peek at the taste of this dragon-shaped dumpling, but slowly she just clamped her legs, crossed her arms, and her face turned red, and when she opened her eyes again, she actually showed an expression of can't stop. Aside seeing Arena being captured in an instant, Hisako was secretly surprised again. Although the shrimp dumplings this time have a strong visual effect of going to heaven, they are just shrimp dumplings with simple ingredients. Smell, is it really that delicious? Taste, is it really that magical? So, Nito Hisako quickly picked up a small dumpling and prepared to taste it. She took a bite of the outer shell first, feeling the delicate texture and aroma of the dumplings, and then she couldn't help but take another bite of the fillings inside. Savoring the delicious shrimp meat, its delicious shrimp filling complements the thin crust, and when all the flavors blended together in the mouth, Shasha instantly felt the unique deliciousness and infinite charm of shrimp dumplings. So after just one bite, she was completely stunned. It is no exaggeration to say that this dragon-shaped dumpling made her understand in an instant what food that breaks the limits is. This, Fei. Shasha, who was short of words, didn't know how to describe this dish for a while. In the end, after holding it in for a long time, she could barely manage to say 2 words: tasty, fresh shrimp meat, cooked shrimp shank and fatty pork head, shrimp brains, dehydrated fresh bamboo shoot tips, all-purpose flour, starch. To be honest, the ingredients used for this kind of dumpling are indeed very simple, but just use a high fire to steam it, and finally you can achieve a crystal clear effect with red and white fillings in the center. When I look at the dumplings in front of me, the skin is as white as snow, as thin as paper, and translucent, and the fillings inside are faintly visible. The commander-in-chief, who has tasted countless dishes in his life, will inevitably be amazed, especially when he finally saw Irina, who had no resistance at all because of this kind of dumpling. His mood was extremely complicated. After all, he had never seen it before in all these years, and he couldn't believe it. There will be a dish. And it is a simple shrimp dumpling, which can make Irina feel so satisfied. In the end, the commander-in-chief could only open his mouth slightly and take a bite. He wanted to see what kind of magic power Zhang Fan's cooking had that could amaze countless people. Result hissed when he just bit it. The commander-in-chief Nakari Sinziman's shirt exploded. Ah, grandfather, he just took one bite and his clothes exploded. Irina was almost stunned when she saw this, although she knew that these dragon-shaped dumplings would definitely make her grandfather burst into tears, but I didn't expect it to be so fast. In almost an instant, I conquered the commander-in-chief. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49: An Insurmountable Wall. Awesome. This dish looks stunning, but the taste is even better. It may seem like the ingredients are simple, but the portions of each ingredient are perfectly matched, so much so that the inside of the dumpling is like a perfect world. Under that thin cocoon is filled with simple yet filling deliciousness. Good, what? An indescribable dish. In fact, clothes are torn. This is a skill of the commander-in-chief. Regardless of the world of Shakyujin no Soy, most of them are ordinary people, and most of the dishes they cook are very realistic, but in this world, excellent people usually have a kind of superpower. As for Nakare Sinziman, as long as he can eat delicious food, he will activate the clothing bursting skill and explode his shirt. Looking at this world, there are actually very few chefs who can meet the standards in his mind, make his food satisfying, and even make him burst into tears. Basically, they are all elites who can be named in the entire culinary world. Therefore, if Tatsuki students knew that the owner of an Izakaya could instantly blow off the commander-in-chief's shirt with just a simple shrimp dumpling, I'm afraid they would all commit suicide in shame. At last, amidst the continuous exclamations of the 3 people, I ate the entire basket of generously portioned Shanglong dumplings. Among them, Irina actually ate the most, eating 30 dumplings in one go. Oh, it's so enjoyable. Sure enough, only Zhang Fan's food is as delicious as ever. Touching his swollen belly, Nido Fisha couldn't help but lower his head and looked at the empty steamer, feeling that he was still unsatisfied. Whether it is the heat, seasoning, plating, cost accounting, visual effects of the dishes, etc., Zhang Fan has achieved the ultimate, and because Irina has the power of God's tongue that is different from ordinary people, she is better able to understand how powerful this ordinary shrimp dumpling is. Zhang Fan, can you tell me the name of this dumpling? Shuang Long dumplings, Zhang Fan replied to Irina. Shanglong, the name is very elegant, and it seems like that. Irina nodded, obviously very satisfied with the name of this dish, and then she said, so, what is the reason why dumplings can fly up? You do not know, huh? What do I know? Irina was stunned. I thought that with your ability of God's tongue, you could figure out the reason why dumplings go to heaven. Seeing this, Zhang Fan could only shake his head and chuckled before continuing. Actually, it is to use the different thermal expansion degrees of different dumpling wrappers. Dumpling wrappers made of all-purpose flour and crystal wrappers made of orange flour, due to their different degrees of expansion, will create a 3-dimensional feel inside the dumplings during the heating process. To put it bluntly, this dumpling is held up to the sky because the dumpling skin expands so much. Is that the reason? If not, Irina stared at Zhang Fan closely after hearing this. After knowing that he didn't mean to tease me this time, I slowly calmed down my excitement. Sometimes, she really wanted to use the god's tongue to exchange Sun Wukong's fire eyes, and then use these god's eyes to see everything about Zhang Fan, but it is a pity that she does not have such ability, nor can she use any means to see Zhang Fan clearly. Just like Kobayashi Gentian, who often goes to Izakaya and is attracted by his personal charm, Arena has always believed that the image of Zhang Fan in the Izakaya is not as simple as it seems on the surface. Before those three kinds of Western fast food use the leftovers of ingredients to create magical dishes. Also, last night's Tensei spring rolls used the heat of the kitchen knife to preserve the freshness of the sea bream, coupled with this shocking shorayu dumpling. Nakiri Arena finally fully understood how big the gap between herself and him was. If she possesses the power of God's tongue, she is a brave female knight who can fight through obstacles and overcome many difficulties, and then stand at the top of the cooking world. Then, Zhang Fan is an omnipotent god. Every cooking work he completes will definitely shock and tremble all the mortals in the world, including her, Arena. Yes, in Arena's eyes, Zhang Fan is a high wall that no one can overcome. All the time in Arena's perception, a real chef must have strong cooking knowledge, then you must dare to innovate and try. If you just follow the cooking knowledge learned from books and stick to the old rules, it is absolutely impossible to create perfect cuisine. But, on Zhang Fan, his passion and pursuit of cooking really made her feel particularly terrible for the first time. 2 days ago, when she was at the Izakaya, she didn't observe too thoroughly, but after this Shenglong dumpling, she finally understood that Zhang Fan's cooking always puts the needs of diners first, but at the same time, his cooking skills and talents can also be reflected in every simple dish. It doesn't mean that if he stays in an izakaya and cooks ordinary and cheap dishes every day, his cooking skills will be completely wasted, and if such a person can be given a larger platform, he will definitely spread his wings and fly high like an eagle that has escaped from its cage. Grandfather, how do you feel? Afterwards, Arena put away her complicated emotions. He turned to look at the commander-in-chief, who had already found a shirt from nowhere and put it on again, and said seriously, his cooking, it is indeed very unusual. Take this Shenglong dumpling. In my eyes, it is simply the most perfect work created by the creator. This time, the commander-in-chief had a great change in his view of Zhang Fan, and even secretly exclaimed, "Why, he is so young and promising." Anytime there is no shortage of geniuses with outstanding gifts and talents, and for the fiercely competitive Totsuki Academy, genius is even more of a waste. A monster like Arena, whose starting point is higher than what ordinary people would reach after a lifetime of struggle just by relying on talent alone, is now only the 10th seed of the 10 elites. Just ask those Totsuki graduates which one didn't become a leader in the culinary world by the end. Therefore, as the commander-in-chief Yuan Yu, he has seen a lot of so-called geniuses, but to be honest, any genius, even Seiba Joichiro, who he considered to be the strongest, could not compare to the Zhang Fan in front of him at this moment. Chapter 50 Greatness. In a busy and fast world at night, it is a noble haven. In addition to shopping and entertainment, there are all kinds of rich life in the city at night. Some people choose to take a walk in the park, chat in a cafe, and some people come to bars or nightclubs to release their stress. Now in an izakaya, a portion of Shenglong dumplings showed the commander-in-chief how powerful Zhang Fan was. As a result, the commander-in-chief, who usually didn't even want to stay in such a small place, was not in a hurry to leave. Liquor. The taste is very elegant. It has a refreshing rice aroma and fruity aroma, and it feels like a breeze blowing in your mouth. However, after taking a sip of sake, the commander-in-chief inevitably felt depressed. After all, an excellent chef like Zhang Fan should be famous in the entire culinary world. As a result, if it weren't for Arena, he probably would never have had a chance to meet Zhang Fan in his life. Zhang Fan, is that the name? With your own abilities, why don't you go to a 5-star hotel, like the Tatsuki Rikyu Hotel in our resort? Any chef there can earn an annual salary of more than 10 million yen, or become a lecturer or professor at Tatsuki Academy. The salary is also very generous. It's not much worse than you working hard to run this izakaya. Talk, nothing is said. However, Zhang Fan could still understand what the commander-in-chief meant. Speak out, you. An Arena may not believe it too much. Actually, I was already a chef in a 5-star hotel when I was very young. Although I dare not claim to be the strongest in the world, I am still outstanding among my peers. But in that position, I have witnessed many geniuses pay a heavy price for their greed for power and arrogance. At this time, Listening to Zhang Fan's words, the commander-in-chief actually vaguely saw the back of the real genius. Yes, he is the strongest student of the 69th class, and no one in the entire Totsuki Academy can surpass him yet. Seiba Joichiro, he is definitely a true genius, and his ability is similar to Zhang Fan's. He can create unprecedented dishes using simple ingredients, but at that time, even though he was a genius, he still could not reach the highest peak. Therefore, on the one hand, people have high hopes for him. On the other hand, people are jealous of his talent. In the end, because he was too eager to meet the increasing expectations of others, he gradually developed psychological problems. He started to forcibly feed his juniors with dark food, continuously skip classes and wasted the top 10, and even finally achieved the feat of 1 versus 50 and still win. But after doing these ridiculous things, his psychological pressure was still not released. He was like a tightrope that suddenly broke. He completely collapsed before the final match of the blue started. I have to admit that this is a tragedy of Totsuki's education and a tragedy of Seiba Castle's life. Well, that time isn't he a genius like you? If he could have the same awareness as you, be able to put down those heavy burdens, be able to, that's all. No more words will be used at this time. It's obvious. Zhang Fan's words brought back some memories for the commander-in-chief. He could only sip the sake again, trying to use the taste of the wine to drown out the pain. Many things are definitely not something you can possess when you are born, nor can you learn them all at once. Only through continuous training and accumulation over time, coupled with the reflections gained from what you have learned and done, can you force yourself to grow. Therefore, as soon as Zhang Fan takes action, the commander-in-chief will have a clear idea in his mind. Unlike Arena, she wants to please the diners with the most luxurious dishes. Zhang Fan, on the other hand, wants to use the simplest ingredients to create the most perfect dishes to make diners happy. The concept of two people, whether it's right or wrong, the commander-in-chief doesn't want to explore carefully, but in his eyes, no matter what kind of chef he is, he should maintain his love for cooking from beginning to end, and Zhang Fan is such a person. Even after his own achievements have surpassed many people, he has never been greedy for gain, but still maintains his original intention. In fact, the commander-in-chief knows the shortcomings of Yuan Yu's education. This kind of competitive education method will definitely cause all Totsuki Academy to become crazy. Involved in an extremely cruel environment, every student will inevitably force himself to grow up quickly at all costs. Even if it's a dirty trick or betraying one's own conscience, he will do it without any hesitation. They don't care whether the food should reflect their own value, or whether the food should have characteristics. In their eyes, as long as the food can win, it is good food. In other words, under this education system, everyone has actually lost their sincerity and their original love for cooking. Of course, this can't be entirely their fault. After all, top 10 heroes like Arena can use the power in their hands to do whatever they want. Naturally, everyone has no sympathy for the weak. He won't show any mercy. If he can be trampled to death, he will trample him hard. Why so? Good. It's rare to find a pure chef like you in this world. Perhaps I can understand a little bit why you gave up your identity as a 5-star hotel chef and ran in Izakaya by yourself. The commander-in-chief took another sip of wine, and then sighed deeply. In Totsuki Academy, we have many elite chefs from all over the world. They are extremely capable and have good teaching skills, but they are at a loss when it comes to how to explore the true essence of cooking and how to lead students to the right path. Ashamed to say it, the reason for this, of course there are flaws in our education methods, but I believe that if Zhang Fan you can come to Yuan Yu Academy as a lecturer, then, with your own cooking skills and personal charm, you can definitely completely change the corrupt atmosphere of the entire school. Perhaps, now, you just want to run the Izakaya well, but wouldn't it be a great thing if I could pass on all my skills to those energetic students so that they can fully shine in the culinary world in the future? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.